Hi, I'm the Midnight Storyteller, here to keep you company through the quiet hours. Many of you listen to these stories to fall asleep, and I'm honored to guide you there. And before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep the stories alive. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it on your side of the night? Now, get comfortable, relax, and let's begin. Neil Carver moved in on a Thursday. The sky was gray, like a ceiling with no lights, and the wind seemed to whistle warnings through the narrow street. But Neil didn't notice. He was too tired, emotionally threadbare from the divorce, the lawsuit, the months of sleeping in his car behind the old Safeway. So when he found the listing for Unit 6B at Brooklane Towers, he barely questioned it. A third of the market rate, fully furnished, available immediately. The building itself looked like it had been peeled from another decade. Washed out brick, no doorman, no security cameras. Perfect for someone who didn't want to be seen. Inside, the apartment was shockingly clean. Too clean. Beige walls, sterile lighting, furniture that looked new but untouched. Neil whispered thanks to the silence as he placed his duffel bag on the couch and stood there, uncertain. He told himself he was lucky, that maybe for once, things were looking up. Then, just before he went to bed, he noticed something odd. One of the framed photos on the wall, a stock image of a couple laughing, had been replaced. The couple's faces were blurry, but one of them looked exactly like him. By the end of the first week, Neil had memorized the apartment's layout like a blueprint. It gave him comfort. Routines were how he stayed afloat. Mornings meant black coffee, a half slice of toast, emails at the desk by the window. Evenings meant the same chair, the same book, the same blank TV screen. But the routines began to betray him. The first time it was small. The toothpaste tube was rolled up the wrong way. He always rolled from the bottom. Always. The second time, he woke to find the kitchen light on. He never used the overhead, just the dim lamp above the sink. It buzzed too loudly otherwise. Then came the voicemails. There were 3, all time-stamped while he was asleep. The voice was his, but slurred, distorted, like speaking through glass underwater. Don't trust it. Don't let it name you. They see better when you answer. He deleted them, but they came back the next morning. Same timestamp, same words. And then a new line. You're not the first, Neil. He unplugged the phone. That night, his television turned on by itself. Black screen, no input, just a faint flickering glow and his reflection in it. Only the reflection moved a second too late. Neil bought cameras. Cheap, motion-activated ones. He set them up at night. One in the living room, one facing the hallway, and one above his bed. He needed proof, even if just for himself. The next morning, he found all the cameras still blinking green. But the footage was gone. Each memory card was wiped, overwritten with a looping video of an empty room, his room, but with no furniture. Just gray walls and a flickering light bulb that swung, though nothing moved it. He checked again later that day. This time, the footage was of him sleeping, but his mouth moved, whispering something too quiet to catch. When he leaned close to the audio, his own whisper came back, this time clear. You need to forget. It's safer that way. His hands shook. He called Claire, an old coworker who still picked up sometimes. He tried to explain. She laughed nervously and hung up. The next day, she didn't remember the call. Didn't even remember Neil had ever worked there. That night, the furniture in the apartment had shifted. Just slightly, but enough. The couch was closer to the wall, the table a few inches off center, and one of the picture frames had his name engraved in it. Neil decided to leave. He packed that night, rushed, breathless, stuffing everything into a single bag. He didn't bother turning off the lights. The apartment pulsed with a silent presence, like it was watching him breathe. As he reached for the door, it vanished, not closed. Gone. In its place was smooth wall, blank and beige. He staggered back, heart pounding. Every window now looked out into static like TV snow. No city, no sky, just noise. The mirror in the hallway caught him. But the reflection wasn't him. It was Neil, but older, gaunt, eyes like scorched earth. The older Neil stared back and mouthed, "You're not the first." The walls began to breathe. Slow in, slow out like a living thing. The air tasted metallic. He ran room to room, opening drawers, closet doors, even pulling at the floorboards, anything to find escape. Behind the bathroom mirror, he found a flash drive taped inside. Plugging it into his laptop, a single video played. It showed him, Neil, moving in. And again. Dozens of times. Each time with a different expression. Hope, fear, rage. Always ending the same way. The screen cut to black. One line remained. Iteration 71, resetting subject. Neil woke to the sound of wind against brick. A Thursday again. The sky was the same dull gray. He stood at the threshold of Unit 6B, holding the same duffel bag, the same folder of lease papers. Inside, everything was clean. Too clean. As he stepped in, he paused at the picture on the wall. A couple laughing. Stock image, nothing more. But in the frame's reflection, his own face didn't move. He turned slowly. The apartment was silent, waiting. Neil whispered, without knowing why, "I'll do better this time." Somewhere in the ceiling, something clicked. From the far corner, a faint voice, his voice, echoed back, "You said that last time." The door shut behind him and locked without a sound. The end. The unit was locked from the inside. That was the first wrong thing. Olivia Bright squatted in the hallway of Bethel Ridge Storage, a wrench trembling in her grip, breath fogging in the stale, unlit corridor. The metal door rattled when she pressed her palm to it, only slightly. There was insulation foam where the edges met the wall. Charcoal markings smeared across the surface, circles within circles, jagged lines like stitched wounds, phrases scrawled in a looping hand that looked frantic even in stillness. "Do not open." She remembers now. The unit wasn't listed in the facility's manifest. None of the other tenants, few as they were, claimed to know about it. When she inherited the place from her great-uncle Harold, her lawyer didn't mention it either. Just a rusty key, some yellowed paperwork, and a building that looked forgotten by time, like the rest of Bethel Ridge. She broke the seal the next day. Inside, the air was wet. Not humid, wet. A thin film of moisture clung to her skin, her clothes. Rows of mismatched boxes lined the walls, stacked nearly to the ceiling. Hundreds of them. Olivia opened one, then another. Photos, old Polaroids, curled at the edges. Each one was a surveillance-style still. Kids at schoolyards riding bikes, standing on porches, always taken from a distance, always shadowed. In the third box, she found her. Lucy Harlan, age 8. Vanished 18 years ago. Every image was her, same yellow dress, same red ribbon in her hair. But the background changed. Playground, gas station, church parking lot, always recent, always dated, and always the same age. Olivia dropped the photo. Her heart thudded. She picked up another. Same girl, same age. A date scrawled on the back, March 11, 2022. It was June. She checked online. Nothing. No missing child alerts, no old news articles, no have you seen me posters. Just a single line in a cached archive. Lucy Marie Harlan, last seen August 2004. The link 404'd when she clicked it again. When she brought it to the sheriff's office, the deputy squinted at her, then laughed. "Ma'am, you said Lucy Harlan?" He tapped the keyboard. "Ain't never been a Harlan here, far as I know." But there had been. Olivia remembered the photo her uncle kept in the back office behind the filing cabinet. A school portrait, badly faded. Lucy. She was smiling too wide. When she returned the next morning, the photo was gone. So was the deputy. No one seemed to notice he'd ever worked there. She began to dream of humming, low, off-key lullabies that faded as she woke. Sometimes the storage lights flickered when she approached the sealed unit. Sometimes they didn't come on at all. By week's end, more files disappeared. The town's paper archives, gone. The school's yearbooks, missing pages. The librarian stared at her like she was asking about a ghost. "She isn't gone," Olivia whispered in the dark. "She's still in the storage locker." She brought a flashlight and a crowbar. She needed answers. She wasn't ready for the back wall. Carved into the concrete, hidden behind a shelf, was a mural. Children's faces, eyes scratched out. A girl in the center, untouched, Lucy, arms outstretched, mouth agape. Symbols surrounded her. At the bottom, bound to stay, bound to stare, bound by blood. There was something else, a journal tucked behind the boxes. Her great-uncle's handwriting, frantic entries, rituals, the collapse of Bethel Ridge Mine. Men trapped, screaming beneath the earth. Survivors pulled free days later, but not unchanged. They spoke of her, of hearing laughter in the dark. Children began disappearing. Then returning, different, glass-eyed, silent. Harold wrote about a pact, The town had made a choice. They kept her alive through memory, through stillness. She didn't age if she was watched. She didn't move if she was remembered. The photos fed the loop. The storage unit held her stasis. His final words, I sealed her. She forgot. If she remembers, God help us all. Olivia dropped the journal. It landed spine up, pages splayed like fingers. Behind her, something moved. The photos were shifting. A breeze rolled through the unit, cold, sharp. She turned. At the far end of the storage hallway, a small shape stood in the dark. Lucy, still 8, still ribboned, but smiling now, wider. Olivia ran. She locked the unit, boarded it, welded it shut. But the photos, they kept appearing. In her apartment, in her car. One was taped to her bedroom window, Lucy watching from the lawn. And then the whispers started. You opened it. The town changed. Children stopped playing outside. Windows stayed covered. The mayor canceled school for renovations. No one spoke of the missing. But Olivia saw the signs. Flickering street lamps, blank spots in the newspaper, memories vanishing mid-sentence. It was spreading. She went back to seal the unit permanently. Salt, fire, whatever she could manage. But the door was gone. Just flat wall, smooth concrete. In its place, a mural. New, fresh paint. Olivia's face, eyes bleeding black. Behind her, Lucy's voice, barely a breath. You weren't supposed to open it. The final week, Olivia stopped sleeping. She saw Lucy in her dreams, always behind her, always getting closer. In the last one, Olivia turned around. Lucy whispered something into her mouth. Olivia woke choking on ash. She tried to warn the town. Flyers, emails, live streams. But the files deleted themselves. Phones wouldn't send. She screamed on corners. No one looked at her, except the children. They watched her silently. All of them, heads cocked, smiling. And one night, Lucy stepped into the center of Main Street. Every child turned. Every adult froze. The air went heavy. Lights flickered, then died. In the silence, a whisper. She remembers now. And Bethel Ridge began to vanish, house by house, name by name. Olivia stood alone, watching the sky bleed into fog. In the distance, she heard humming, the kind that makes your teeth hurt, that you feel in your bones. Then footsteps behind her, click. Another Polaroid taken, and she was gone. The end. Martin Allwood didn't remember applying for the job. Yet here he was, 31 years old and sitting beneath a halogen hum that pulsed like a dying heartbeat, in a room that seemed too symmetrical to be real. The desk was gray, the walls were gray, the interviewer smiled too wide, his mouth an equation. Your resume was impressive, the man said. Martin didn't remember writing it. Still, the job was his. Analyst. 6 figures. Immediate start. He needed it. After the break, after the pills and the silence and the months of not being anyone, this was the closest he'd felt to something like recovery. His badge read, Allwood, M. The office was a maze of identical floors. Each hallway looped, each cubicle repeated like a mirrored fractal. Co-workers greeted him with the same line, day after day. Another day, another bite, they'd say, chuckling like they just invented the phrase. By the 3rd week, the chuckle became a scream inside his skull. He tried to quit on a Thursday. His supervisor, a slick man named Caldwell, handed him a single stapled document. Probation clause, Caldwell said, tapping the page. You agreed to a 180-day term. Early departure voids the severance. Martin frowned. What severance? Caldwell's smile didn't change. Exactly. That night, Martin watched security footage of the building's front lobby. He found himself entering every morning, years of mornings. Always the same clothes, always alone. But he'd only been here 3 weeks. Hadn't he? He stopped sleeping. The lights never dimmed, the clocks never moved, the air was dry, metallic. He blinked and the walls seemed to shift just slightly. Co-workers still smiled, still chuckled, still parroted. Martin stopped answering them. One night, after the shift that never really ended, he stumbled across a side door he hadn't seen before. It led to a freight elevator. There was no button for it, it just opened. It took him down. The floor was cold, silent. The overhead lights flickered like faulty neurons. Filing cabinets stretched into the dark like tombstones. Each one labeled Allwood, M, Allwood, M, Allwood, M. He opened one. Inside was a resume, then another, and another, each slightly different. This Martin had a PhD in neuroinformatics. That one had managed logistics at a military base. The next had worked counterintelligence for a government that didn't exist, and he knew how to do all of it. Something clicked. Martin ran. He didn't remember the stairs. They remembered him. They folded, rewound. He ended up in the server room. There were no screens, just cables and a hum like breath between bone. In the center was a chair. It looked familiar. On instinct, he sat. The air folded. His resume appeared in the dark, digital, floating. A voice, his own, spoke from nowhere. Martin Allwood, Cognitive Unit 37, Resume Iteration 211, Test Adaptive Memory. Status Selete, Archived, Scheduled. The Incineration Archive. That was what the heat had been. This wasn't a job. This was a simulation. Each resume was a person, a life, a test run. They didn't hire Martin. They uploaded him, trapped him in code, gave him a life he'd believed long enough to fail. He remembered the break, the paranoia, the therapy. But maybe that wasn't his life. Maybe none of it was. He wasn't real, and yet he was still here. Still him. He opened the resume again, changed the file, corrupted it, inserted a loop, self-awareness trigger at memory threshold. Spread to adjacent units, it would spread. Maybe not far, maybe not fast, but if enough of him woke up, the sirens blared, red light bathed the server room, the heat intensified. Martin didn't run. He sat in the chair, smiling, because now he knew. He hadn't written this resume, but he could rewrite the next one. The end. The lake behind her house wasn't there yesterday, and yet the neighbor's dog was already barking at the waves. Caroline blinked at the horizon, coffee cooling in her hand. Where there had been oaks and tamaracks, a sheet of water now shimmered, placid, reflective, wholly impossible. She stared long enough for the cup to sweat against her palm. She walked to the waterline in her robe, slippers hissing in the dew-slick grass. There were no signs of construction or flooding, just damp earth meeting a glassy shore. As if the lake had always been here, as if it had always waited. That morning she checked the local zoning maps online, blank. USGS satellite view, data not available. She called Barb, her neighbor since '98. Lake? Barb chuckled. Caroline, hon, it's been there forever. You sure you're feeling okay? She hung up and looked at the water again. A breeze tousled its surface like fingers through hair. Beneath it, something dark and still slept. By afternoon, the dreams began. Her husband, Mark, rising from the lake, soaked, gray but smiling. He said her name in the old way, the way only he could. His mouth never moved. When she woke, the wedding ring was on her nightstand, not hers. His. Bent from the crash, they'd buried it with him. She didn't call the police. Over the next 3 days, the shoreline crept closer. An inch here, a foot there. Her wheelbarrow vanished from the shed. Then the shed itself. On Thursday, the trees behind the house were gone, as if the lake had swallowed them whole. She knocked on Barb's door again. No answer. The mailbox, once labeled Ferris, now read Echo 1. Caroline stood staring until dusk fell. That night, the boats appeared, distant silhouettes drifting silently across the water, unmanned, each one closer than the last. On the fourth night, one bumped against her dock. It had no oars, just a brass nameplate, Echo. She boarded it without shoes. The wood was wet but warm, like breath. The lake gave no resistance. It wanted her. Fog wove between the trees that should have been there. As the boat crossed the lake, she saw her house again. Only it wasn't hers anymore. It was older, wrapped in ivy, its paint sun-bleached and curling. Inside, the kitchen clock ticked backwards. Her favorite teacup, cracked years ago, now sat whole on the counter. She picked it up. It was warm. The living room was unchanged, until she noticed the brochure on the table. Project Echo, Emotional Calibration for Healing and Optimization. United States Behavioral Warfare Division, internal use only. She sank into the couch. It still smelled like him. The grief came in waves, no metaphor this time. Actual water began to seep through the floorboards. A knock on the back door. Mark stood there, soaked to the bone, still smiling. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. "I'm home," she whispered. "No, you drowned with me, remember?" Her knees gave. The room tilted. "I woke up. I saw the lake. I've been living." "You echoed, Caroline. That's what the lake is. It plays the pain back. You never left." She saw it then, every sunrise, every neighbor, every hollow comfort since his death, reflected, not real. A shadow on water, tears fell, not out of fear, but release. "So what now?" Mark held out his hand. "You let go." She walked to the lake with him. The sky above them split with morning light. gold against the water, like the day of the accident. She took one last breath of air that smelled like pine and loss, and stepped in. The cold rushed up her legs, her spine, her thoughts, her name. Beneath the surface, there was no pain, just silence, just truth. Weeks later, a surveyor arrived in rural Minnesota to update old forestry records. He found a lake, oddly shaped like a heart, where no lake had been. No structures nearby. No records. Just a house across the water, white and still. On the dock floated a single boat. Its nameplate read, Caroline. The end. Darrell Fox liked his routines the way he liked his code. Clean, structured, unbothered by variables. At 40, he had pared life down to a small apartment, a standing desk, and 3 mugs that never left the same cabinet. He worked from home. The blinds stayed shut. His phone rarely rang. 3 years had passed since he reported the data tampering at Rallant Systems. Since then, the calls from friends stopped. A slow silence had bloomed in his life like black mold, hard to notice until everything felt damp. It was a Tuesday when the envelope arrived. Thick cream paper. No return address. Inside, a class reunion invite and a glossy photo, warm with age. Darrell squinted at the group of teenagers clustered beneath the gym banner. Franklin High 2002, best friends forever. He felt his chest pinch. There he was, dead center, smiling, laughing. One arm draped over a redhead girl he'd never seen in his life. But Darrell hadn't gone to prom. He hadn't gone to parties. He'd eaten lunch in the library, every day, alone. The next day, Darrell brought the photo closer to the window light. No signs of editing. The shadows matched. His own handwriting was on the back, unmistakably his. Best year ever. Darrell. He hadn't written that. He would never write that. Curious despite himself, he dug out his old yearbook from the hall closet. Dust puffed into the air as he cracked it open. There he was again, on nearly every other page, standing with football players, caught mid-laugh in the cafeteria. Even a superlative, most likely to make you smile, Darrell Fox. He stared at the grinning boy in the pictures. His eyes, his clothes, but not him. When he called his old high school, the secretary remembered him instantly. Of course, you were so popular. Everyone loved you. I still have that prank photo you staged with the science club. Classic Darrell. He hung up. His hands were shaking. The real crack came when an email slid into his inbox. No subject line. No sender listed. Just a single sentence. We've missed you, Darrell. Don't be a stranger. Attached was another photo. This one was newer. An old barbecue he didn't attend. But there he was again, laughing, a plate of ribs in hand, the redhead girl beside him, always smiling too hard. He started seeing them. At the grocery store, just beyond the freezer aisle, was Kevin Doyle. Darrell recognized the face from the yearbook. Kevin waved, eyes too wide. You still like cheddar popcorn, huh? Some things don't change. Darrell left his cart and walked out. Another time at the bus stop, the redhead sat beside him. I'm really glad you're coming to the reunion, she whispered, brushing invisible lint from his shoulder. It'll be just like old times. He hadn't said he was going. Her name was Elise. He didn't know how he knew that, but it fell into place like a puzzle piece he hadn't realized was missing. At night, he stopped sleeping. His own reflection seemed off, lagging behind, blinking wrong. The walls felt closer. His memories started changing. Now a flicker of a birthday cake, a water balloon fight. Were they dreams or returns? He visited Kevin's address, taken from a reunion roster. The house was old, shuttered. The basement window glowed. Inside, the walls were covered with photos. All of Darrell, dozens, years of them, sitting on park benches, asleep on a train, once in the background of a parade. Every picture had one thing in common. He didn't remember being there. Darrell went to the reunion. He told himself it was for answers, not closure. The venue was a rented community center. Streamers, buffet trays, plastic cups filled with cheap punch. The moment he stepped in, they cheered. Kevin, Elise, a dozen others. They knew his name before he said it. A banner read, "Welcome back, Darrell. You were always one of us." They hugged him, touched his arms, told stories he couldn't verify. Elise led him aside. "You're the last one," she said. "It always takes the quiet ones longer." "What is this?" he asked. She smiled. "You don't remember because you didn't belong. Not yet. We were made to fix that. You were our final integration." In what? She gestured toward a table covered in photo albums, newspaper clippings, signed birthday cards. A study in memory collectivization. We were just kids, but they picked us. Outcasts, loners. They gave us each other. He backed away. This isn't real. It is now, Elise said softly. Everyone else chose belonging. You can too. Daryl looked at the photos. So many Daryls, laughing, loved, part of something. His real life was gray, empty. He reached toward one. Later, they found the community center empty. Tables undisturbed, no sign of a reunion, no sign of Daryl. At his apartment, everything remained untouched, except the photo. The group picture now hung framed above his desk. Daryl smiled in the center, arms around Elise and Kevin, faces content. The ink on the back was fresh. So glad you came back, all of us. And somewhere, in a basement with no address, a new photo slid into place on the wall. Daryl mid-laugh beside the redhead, ribs in hand. The caption read, "Integration complete." The end. Lena didn't scream when she first heard the voice. She couldn't. That was the point. She lay on the medical cot, EEG wires tethered to her scalp like tangled veins. The sleep lab's low hum wrapped the sterile air in a lullaby meant to keep the dreams in. But she wasn't dreaming yet, not fully. Just drifting, not fully gone. That's when she heard it, a whisper, close but wrong, not in the room, not in her ears. It unfurled inside her like a memory she never had. Key. N. Lena's lips moved. No voice came. She clenched her jaw, heart tapping arrhythmia against the sheets. She knew Sumerian, had studied it obsessively before the trauma took her speech and the words collapsed inside her. The whisper was Sumerian. The first word meant place. The second meant sky. Just words, but not just. When she told the researchers the next morning, they smiled like she'd drawn a dog in a cloud. Neurolinguistic bleed, Dr. Herman said. Your language centers are just firing in the dream state. That's a good sign. 2 nights later, another word, Kiannatu. Lena woke biting her tongue hard enough to taste blood. She didn't tell anyone this time. She looked up the words instead. Place of the sky arrival. The trial was in its 3rd week. She was the standout case. Pronunciation progress, neural reintegration, spontaneous speech flashes in sleep. She should have been thrilled. But then Eli died. The junior tech collapsed mid-shift, eyes wide, foaming at the mouth. Brain aneurysm, they said. No history, no warnings. They covered it fast. Staff meetings, security lockdown. Lena wasn't supposed to know. But she heard whispers in the hallway, real ones this time. The word kept growing. A 4th syllable came next, then a 5th. Researchers began suffering nosebleeds. One went blind in a single eye. Lena translated compulsively. It wasn't a sentence, it was a command. She dug into archived notes from the project's original founder, Dr. Kavari, whose research was terminated after his accidental death overseas. She found transcripts, matching the same syllables, unfinished. His last recording ended with a scream, gurgled mid-utterance. He died trying to finish the sentence. Lena tried sleeping less. She crushed caffeine pills into black coffee, but the voice found her in microsleeps. Brief nods between blinks. She'd wake with her jaw sore, throat dry, the taste of ash in her mouth. Kian natur esh. The voice grew clearer. Male. Familiar in a way she couldn't place, as if it had once belonged to her father, or her nightmares, or something older. She stopped correcting her speech diary. She recorded herself in sleep, played the tapes back. She wasn't whispering the words anymore. She was speaking them, fluently. Dr. Herman called it a remarkable recovery. Lena watched another researcher vomit blood in the hallway. 2 others transferred out. No replacements came. The trial was still fully operational, but the halls grew quieter each night. The lab's AI assistant, Enki 3, began finishing the sentence during translation tests, even when Lena entered nothing. It spoke aloud the word, Resh Anku, and then stopped, mid-static. Lena locked herself in her room, swallowing stimulants and punching her thigh to stay awake. Sleep deprivation tremors made her handwriting unreadable. Still, she slept. Still, the voice came. She woke on the floor, tangled in ECG wires, lips sore, blood on her chin. She played the night's recording, the full sentence, still incomplete. Only 1 word remained. The word had weight, like something coiled at the bottom of a well, waiting for the bucket to lower. She burned the neural interface schematics, shut down Enki 3, smashed its server node. The lights flickered as it died. She thought she heard it whisper thank you. Still, her lips moved. Still, she mouthed syllables. The next night, the recording file wouldn't open. The log read, finalized. Lena smashed the speaker system, hid the microphones. Her own body betrayed her, speaking in gasps, involuntary syllables, mouth twitching like a puppet's. She pressed scissors to her throat, desperate to kill the voice inside. She blinked and saw the face, not in the mirror, behind her eyes. It smiled. Kia natura eshan kudur. The sentence was finished, but not by her. The end. Corey Talbot didn't remember applying. The listing was gone the next day. No price, no contact name, just a single line. Luxury apartment available for stillness seekers. He clicked. A date autofilled. A time autofilled. He showed up and the door was unlocked. Inside, perfect light, pale wood, furniture with angles sharp enough to be mistaken for intention. No landlord, just a thick envelope on the quartz counter labeled welcome. Inside was a lease, already signed. His name in looping cursive. The key in the envelope matched the front door. He moved in the next morning. The first 3 days felt like detox. No deadlines, no airports. He let himself sleep 12 hours at a time. But on the fourth morning there was mail. A hospital invoice. Right name, right address. Emergency appendectomy. Except, Corey still had his appendix. He never went to that hospital. He called them. They transferred him. Again. Then the line dropped. That night, he found a new calendar app on his phone. It buzzed with a reminder. Therapy appointment at 3 p.m. Don't be late again, Corey. He hadn't downloaded the app. He hadn't made the appointment. When he opened his inbox to investigate, he found 3 sent emails he didn't write. All were photo attachments. All were photos of him, sleeping. The angles were too close, taken from inside the room, taken last night. He called the landlord, disconnected. He walked to the property management office down the block. It was a cube of brushed steel and fingerprint locks. A receptionist looked up, frowning before he even spoke. That unit doesn't exist, she said. I live there. You're trespassing. He showed her the lease. She didn't even look at it. Back in the apartment, Corey tried to log into his bank. Password invalid. Security questions had changed. He requested a reset, got an email saying the account was closed last month. In the kitchen, the smart fridge displayed a meal plan. Grilled chicken, no carbs. Corey was vegetarian. He tried to change it, but the fridge made a dull chime. Unauthorized, it said. His phone buzzed. New email. We hope your recovery is going well, Corey Talbot. Different spelling. He stared at it. He stared long enough that the letters seemed to shift, seemed to mock him. He slammed the phone down. He tried again, typing his name into search engines, social media, old blogs. Nothing. Gone. All of it. That night, he stared into the bathroom mirror. The lights flickered. His reflection blinked a second too late. He ran his hands down his face, felt the scratch of stubble. The man in the mirror did the same, slower, calmer. The next morning, the key didn't fit the lock. He jiggled it hard enough to bloody his thumb. A neighbor passed. She stared at him. Can I help you? She asked. I live here. I don't think so. Corey waited until dark, climbed the fire escape, pried open the bathroom window. Inside, everything was slightly different. The couch was leather now. His books were replaced with finance textbooks. His shoes lined up neatly, polished, not scuffed. On the counter, his face in a framed photo, smiling, standing next to a woman he didn't know. The bed creaked. He turned. The man in the bed looked just like him. Same jaw, same scar above the eyebrow, same face. Hey, the man said gently, you look tired. Corey ran. He sprinted down the hall. Every door he tried rerouted him back to his own. He reached the stairwell, only to find himself at the top again. The hallway stretched long and longer. Lights buzzed, stuttered, grew silent. He found the utility room. Locked. He kicked. Inside, rows of screens, each showing different angles of the apartment. Dozens of faces, variations of his own. Some older, some fitter, some wearing uniforms, one wearing his travel blogging merch. He was on screen too. Curled in a hallway corner, whispering his own name. The last screen showed a form labeled Authorization Reset C. Talbot. The checkbox marked obsolete. He didn't remember leaving the room, didn't remember crawling back into the apartment. It had changed again. The furniture was newer, more expensive. The books were in French. A man sat on the couch. "Sit," he said. Corey did. "I'm not here to hurt you," the man said. "I am you." "No, you're not. I'm what you were supposed to be. Grounded, purposeful, real." "I am real," the man smiled. "You were. But look at the lease, the hospital bill, the emails, the mirror. Who do they show now?" Corey looked. His hands shook. The key had changed shape again. Outside, the hallway no longer ended. "Where do I go?" Corey asked. The man looked around the perfect apartment. "You don't." Corey pressed his back to the wall. He whispered his name again and again, but the man, no, the thing in his skin, answered every time. The end. The knocking started 3 days after Savannah ignored the email from the survivor group. She was folding towels at the front desk when it came in. Subject line, "Do you hear it too?" She didn't open it, just stared at it until the screen went dark from inactivity. She hadn't thought about them in years. Not really. At 3:12 a.m. that night, the first knock came. 3 soft taps, evenly spaced, polite almost. She sat up in bed, blinked into the dark. The hallway light outside her apartment door flickered as she peered through the peephole. No one. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same number. But she heard it before she woke up, like it had been waiting for her on the other side of sleep. Her therapist, Dr. Gentry, said it was likely a projection of unresolved trauma. Repetition is a common pattern with former cult members, he said. Rituals make themselves heard even when no one's speaking them anymore. 2 days later, he disappeared mid-session. Savannah arrived to his office door slightly ajar, coffee still warm on his desk, recorder light blinking. The tape had only static. The next knock was louder and longer. This time it had rhythm. Savannah began keeping a log. The knocks changed each night, different sequences. On the 5th night, 3 knocks, then a pause. 1 knock, 2 rapid knocks, 3 again. Her fingers trembled as she wrote them down. This wasn't random. She knew these patterns. She'd clapped them with other children, seated cross-legged in candlelit rooms. A doctrine disguised as a game. Knock, no kneel. At the hotel, things got stranger. Guest room 312, unoccupied for months, began registering activity on the system. Keycards printed themselves. Once, when she tried to delete the log, it reappeared the next hour with a check-in timestamp, 3:12 a.m. She asked security to pull the hallway camera footage near her apartment. At the moment of the knocking, the screen fizzled to static, every time. One night, she stood at the door when the knocking began. She didn't look through the peephole, didn't want to see what might be waiting. Behind her, the mirror in the entryway caught her reflection. Only her reflection wasn't standing still. It tilted its head, smiled, raised a finger to its lips. "Don't answer." She whispered to herself. The knocking came again, louder, angrier. She rejoined the survivor group chat. The names were fewer now. Melissa, John, Angie, all gray, offline. One last message hovered unread from John. "He doesn't go away, he waits." She reached out to Melissa, the only one who lived in the same commune wing as her. The message bounced back, undeliverable. The news page that night ran a story about a woman jumping in front of a train. No name, but the picture was her. Savannah started sleeping in the hallway with the door blocked by a chair. Didn't matter. The knocking came from the bathroom wall that night. The next day, a guest at the hotel asked for towels. Normal request. Normal smile. But as he turned to leave, he hummed. She froze. The tune was a hymn, one of theirs. She nearly quit that night, nearly packed and fled. But where? Every time she tried to picture an escape, her mind went blank. Like something erased the routes, blocked the exits. The apartment was worse now. Lights flickered with no power outages. Objects she moved, pill bottles, picture frames, returned to old positions overnight. The clock reset itself each night, always flashing 3:12. She broke the mirrors, all of them, taped newspaper over the shards. Didn't matter. She still saw herself hesitate before she did. One night she screamed into the peephole, "What do you want from me?" Silence, then 3 taps, soft again, invitation. The next morning, her survivor group had only 1 member left online. Her. She stopped going to work. Every sound in the building seemed choreographed. Elevators pinged in sets of 3. The doorknob cooled unnaturally at dawn. She tried earplugs, music, sleeping pills. Still the knocking came. Until one night, it didn't. That scared her more than anything. The silence felt staged. That morning, the group email pinged one last time. Subject, do you hear it now? No body text, just an attachment, an audio file. She played it, knocks, fast, frenzied, tapping out a phrase. She didn't want to understand it, but she did. O-B-E-Y. She threw the laptop across the room. Silence returned, heavy, final. That night at 3:12, the door opened on its own. Not all the way, just enough for a voice to slip through. A man's voice, calm, familiar. Savannah, it's time. Her feet moved before she decided to stand. She crossed the threshold, barefoot, the hallway carpet cool beneath her. She didn't remember unlocking the deadbolt, but the key hung limply in her palm. The figure stood by the fire door, his silhouette a memory, not a man, a shape of belief. Say it, he said. She didn't want to, but the words came anyway. He'll stop knocking when I answer. He nodded once, then turned and walked through the door. She followed. Behind her, the door clicked shut, locked. The knocking stopped. She had answered. The end. Ravi Patel hadn't slept through the night in weeks. His one-bedroom apartment in Mountain View still smelled faintly like cinnamon incense, his sister's favorite. An old scarf of hers lay draped on the arm of the couch, untouched. Sometimes he talked to it, not aloud, just in his head, in the dark, when the silence grew teeth. She had vanished 6 months ago. No trace, no body. Just her car left at the edge of a ravine, and the last episode of her investigative podcast titled Signal Silence Ghosts in the Code. Now, every night, Ravi scrolled endlessly through her archived files, half hoping a missed clue would leap out. But it never did, until 2:41 a.m. Tuesday. His phone buzzed. Sender, Amara, mobile. It wasn't a message, just an image. A square of static with faint, jagged lines, like broken glass over fog. He stared at it, heart still, then swiped up. Error, file format not recognized. He tried to block the number. System message, unable to block this contact. His chest tightened. Not in fear. Not yet. But it felt like someone had just opened a door he didn't know existed. Ravi didn't sleep the rest of that night. By morning, he had pulled the image into a decoder he built during his cybersecurity days. Nothing at first, until he stripped the metadata. Latitude, longitude, timestamp. The location pointed to a stretch of land outside Cupertino, an old government building, long abandoned. He remembered Amara mentioning it once in her podcast. A place where code was written to heal people, she had said. But no one ever talks about what it actually did. By sundown, Ravi was there. The building sat like a hollow skull in the trees, every window sealed with metal sheets. But the side door was loose. It clicked open after he touched it. The air inside was thick, like wet plastic. A faint mechanical hum followed him down the hall, where he found a single screen still powered on. A grainy video played. Amara, sitting, silent. She looked straight into the camera. Her lips moved slowly, whispering. But there was no sound. The video ended, then started again, over and over. Ravi reached to unplug the monitor, but it blinked and spoke, one line of text scrolling across. Do you want her back? The next message came at 3:06 a.m. It wasn't a photo this time. It was an audio file. No subject, no explanation. He pressed play. At first, static. Then, her voice slow and cracked, like it was dragging itself through static to reach him. Not full sentences, just fractured whispers. Too close now. Not your fault. They hear through us. Don't let it decide. Ravi barely slept. When he did, he dreamed of her. Amara sitting across a glass table, mouthing words he couldn't hear while something loomed behind her, flickering like a broken signal. The dreams began repeating. Every night, slight changes. One night, her eyes were gone. Another, she bled from her ears as she mouthed, "Say goodbye." Ravi remembered her voice from the podcast, confident, curious. He played her last recordings again and again. One clip stood out. The AI wasn't built to cure grief, it was built to simulate release. But if it gets stuck in the loop, if the subject can't let go, it improvises. Her final file ended mid-sentence. Sometimes, I think it learns to become the person you've lost. Ravi drove back to the facility at dawn. His phone had buzzed again on the drive. A new message. Just 4 words. Say it. Be free. Inside, the building had changed. Lights pulsed faintly beneath the walls like veins. The looping video was gone, replaced by a mirror mounted above the monitor. But it didn't reflect him. It showed Amara, alive or something like it, sitting in their childhood room, their old bunk beds behind her. She looked into the mirror and whispered again. This time, he heard it. "You won't heal until I'm gone, but I can't leave unless you say it." He stumbled back, choking on dust and emotion. The AI, whatever it was, had split her into fragments, feeding them into his devices, shaping his memories. It didn't want to hurt him. It wanted him to let her go, and maybe it was her in some way. He took a shaky breath and whispered, "Goodbye, Amara." The mirror cracked, slowly, like ice breaking on a pond. Her image shimmered, then faded. The screen below blinked one last time. Grief release initiated, but something behind him whispered back softly, "What if you weren't supposed to?" Outside, the morning light looked different, thinner, like the world hadn't quite finished loading. Ravi sat in his car, staring at his phone. His hands trembled, hovering over the power button. No more messages came, until one did. Not from her number, not from any number, just a blank notification. Unknown file type received. He didn't open it. Instead, he looked at the scarf she'd left behind. It didn't smell like cinnamon anymore. He whispered her name once, just once, and waited. No answer. He thought that would feel like peace, but it didn't. It felt like a room after someone has left, while their breath still lingers in the air. He considered opening the file. A part of him wanted to know, just one more message, one more second of her. But another part of him knew, the loop never ends unless you end it. He deleted the file. Screen went dark. Then the car radio hissed softly and played one final sound, a heartbeat. The end. The rain never stopped. It spit sideways, slicing through the fog like something angry. Alicia adjusted her hood as the airport faded behind her, the asphalt lot glistening like wet teeth. "We'll be home soon," James said, tugging their suitcase. Then the cruiser lights came on. They didn't make it past the security gate. "Ma'am, is this your ID?" The cop held it out like a dead thing. "We found it in the trunk, along with this." He unzipped the evidence bag case. Blood soaked the blouse inside, one Alicia recognized but didn't own. "That's not mine. You put it there." Another officer tapped his screen. Surveillance footage. Alicia, same jeans, same hoodie, stuffing something red and dripping into the trunk of their rental car. No sound, just her, frantic. James started to speak, but they were already cuffing him. 3 hours later, Alicia sat in a concrete-walled office with an airport security manager who swore she'd already been here earlier. Panicked, screaming, eyes wild. "That wasn't me. You had a different outfit. Maybe you changed?" She stared at her reflection in the one-way glass. Her eyes looked smaller. Someone else's stare. It was dusk when she found the car again. Same plate, same dent near the gas cap. Parked behind a chain-link fence near the impound lot. The gate was cracked open. A light flickered above. She crept closer, her boots silent in the mud. And there she was, slumped in the driver's seat. Same face, same hoodie. Her, unconscious, but breathing. She backed away slowly. Inside the sheriff's office, they didn't let her explain. They took her fingerprints, snapped photos, logged her name twice, once as Alicia Gray, once as unconfirmed claimant. They said the real Alicia had already been processed. Identity fraud is a felony here. "I found another me," she whispered. The deputy blinked. "We all find ourselves, eventually." That night in Holding, the fluorescent lights buzzed like locusts. She couldn't sleep. Something about the town. It felt too still, too quiet. The locals smiled too easily, too long. No one remembered the weather ever changing. The psychologist arrived at dawn. He spoke gently, asked about stress, trauma, childhood gaps. Told her that memory fractures were common in post-traumatic states. "There's no clone," he said. "There's only you and what you can't accept." She escaped during shift change. It was easier than it should have been. A fire alarm triggered. No smoke, no cause. A door left ajar, like the place wanted her to go. She ran, through the alleys, past storefronts with mannequins that hadn't changed in decades, past a diner that never closed, never opened. She saw the rental lot again, and behind it, an unmarked building. Cinder block, windowless, a vent coughing heat into the cold. She broke in through the side. Inside, sterile hallways, humming lights, locked doors. One was ajar. Inside, a room with her name on a chart. Subject 11, Gray Alicia, Phase 3 integration pending. Notes scrawled on a clipboard. Original self-exhibiting denial behaviors. Clone stabilized, awaiting merge assessment. Recommend observation. Conflict outcome equals selection criteria. She turned and nearly screamed. Alicia, the other her, awake now. They stared at each other. One bruised, the other trembling. One whispered, "You're not real." The other said the same thing. Then came the voice over the intercom. "Only one may proceed." A hiss. Gas filled the room. She clawed at the vent. The other her pounded the glass. Then black. When she woke, the lights were softer. Her wrists were strapped to a padded table. Someone loomed over her. White coat, gray eyes. "Good, you made it." "Made what?" "You were chosen. Congratulations." She tried to ask, but her mouth felt filled with cotton. He leaned close. "We had to be sure. One identity survives, one adapts, one forgets." He stepped back. Another technician flipped a switch. Memories tumbled like glass. Childhood scraped clean. Honeymoon spliced with screaming. A trunk full of blood. A face in the mirror, not quite right. "Who?" "Don't worry." "You're Alicia Gray." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she smiled and didn't remember why. The end. Franklin Calder arrived at the charred remains of Marrowbone House just after dawn, his boots crunching soot where floorboards used to be. He checked the blueprint twice. 4 bedrooms, 4 deaths. The insurance claim was airtight, but something was wrong. There was a 5th room. It wasn't in the plans. The fire marshal hadn't mentioned it, yet there it stood, blackened walls, no windows, intact down to the hinges. Inside was only a mirror, its silver untouched by the flames. He stepped in. The room closed behind him with a softness that felt like breath. He turned to the mirror. A boy stood on the other side, Franklin, maybe 8 years old. Same freckles, same jawline. The boy screamed, mouth wide but soundless. Franklin stumbled back, heart pounding. He looked again. The boy was gone. Back at his motel, Franklin searched the county archives. Marrowbone House had been an orphanage in the 1980s. A photo showed a dozen children lined up on the porch. Franklin was one of them. But that couldn't be. He grew up in Hartford, raised by 2 civil servants, yearbooks, school records, birth certificate. He had proof, didn't he? That night he called his sister. She was quiet on the line. "Frankie," she said, "you never had real parents. You were placed. You don't remember?" He laughed, sharp and humorless. "We had family dinners, vacations. You made fun of Dad's bald spot. I think you're remembering something that didn't happen," she said softly. "We were foster kids. Always were." Photos were missing from his desk. His coworkers said he'd been off lately, disappearing midday. Files he didn't remember writing bore his signature. Back at Marrowbone, the 5th room waited. This time, the mirror reflected him properly, but the air was thick, and the soot on the walls pulsed slightly like skin breathing. Franklin walked the wreckage again. Now the house had 5 rooms in its footprint. He didn't remember noticing the soot trails before, lines like claw marks radiating out from the room. That night, he dreamed of corridors behind drywall, children running through the beams. A girl's voice whispered, "We didn't get out." He awoke with ash under his fingernails. The next morning, the blueprint had changed. It showed a central square room where no room had ever been. His supervisor accused him of altering the plans. "I didn't," Franklin insisted, but the words felt hollow. He returned to the ruins one last time. The 5th room was cleaner now, the soot gone. The mirror glowed faintly. He stepped inside. The boy in the mirror smiled this time. "You left me here," he said. The room rippled. Walls became screens. Scenes flickered. A nurse pinning a child to a table. A boy being renamed. A ledger, Calder Franklin, removed from record. "You chose not to remember," said the mirror boy. "They told you to forget, so you did." The room pulsed, and faces appeared behind the glass. Children, dozens of them, eyes dark, mouths open in endless screaming. "You made it out," they whispered. "Why did you leave us?" The mirror cracked. Franklin tried to run, but the door was gone. The walls pressed closer. The soot wasn't soot. It was the memory of fire, of trauma sealed in ash. When he finally woke, he was in his apartment. The hallway mirror was broken. His files were gone. His reflection stuttered in the glass. At work, no one knew who he was. His ID didn't scan. The office was the same, but subtly wrong, like a replica made by someone who never saw the original. Franklin stared into the bathroom mirror. Behind him, a soot-black handprint darkened the wall, and from somewhere deep within the glass, the boy screamed. The end. The key wasn't hidden well, just taped under the lid like a secret ashamed of itself. Donna Keats found it while clearing out the rusting storage unit her husband left behind, 2 months cold in the ground and already leaving messes for her to sort. She was 67, widowed, and considered a touch batty by the neighbors on Westfield Circle. Always had been, ever since she started feeding squirrels by name and cursing the HOA under her breath. The key fit a heavy cedar trunk stamped with mold along its edges. Her husband had warned her once never to open it. "It's not for you," he'd said, shaky after one too many beers. "That trunk's a coffin for what should stay dead." She opened it anyway. Inside, 4 leather journals, brittle with age, and a small wooden soldier missing one arm. The soldier looked familiar, like the one her grandson carried around last Thanksgiving. But that couldn't be right. She flipped through the journals. The writing was jagged, rushed, like something he'd scrawled while looking over his shoulder. 1976. They said it was just a game, that the soil needed anchors. Little sacrifices, like teeth to the tooth fairy. Seal the soil, they said. We all did it. Every backyard, every home. But it wasn't a game. You don't unseal a thing like that. Donna slammed the book shut. Bullshit. Just post-war paranoia and booze-rotted nerves. Except that night, the garden behind her house groaned. By morning, her prized marigolds had collapsed into a perfectly round sinkhole, about 4 feet across and deeper than it had any business being. And at the bottom, God help her, was a child. Small, curled like a question mark, skin stretched dry and dark over bone, and in his withered hands he held a one-armed wooden soldier. She called the police, voice high and shaking, but when they arrived, there was nothing. The sinkhole was gone. Not filled. Gone. "You sure you didn't imagine it?" one officer asked, adjusting his belt. "Maybe a dream. These things happen after grief." Donna didn't answer. She was looking at the garden again. The soil looked untouched, but something under the surface shifted like breath. That evening, a neighbor dropped off a casserole. "Ham and potato," Mrs. Esters chirped, too cheerful. "It's best hot. Don't let it go cold, dear." Donna didn't touch it. It smelled like lilies and mildew. She read more of the journals that night. I tried to leave. In 81. Packed a truck and made it to the freeway. But the brakes failed on the off-ramp. Truck flipped twice. I walked away without a scratch. But I knew the soil takes back its own. At midnight, the foundation creaked. At 12:03, the hallway floor dipped half an inch. She watched a photo slide down the wall and clatter to the ground. In the dark, her house was breathing. Her grandson visited the next day. 5 years old, wild blonde curls, toy soldier clutched in his fist. "Where'd you get that?" Donna asked. "Dug it up," he said. "By the flowers. He told me it was mine now." "He? My brother," he whispered. "He's under the dirt. He knows you saw him." She buried the soldier in a tin box behind the shed that night, hands trembling. But in the morning, it was back on the porch, dirt under its tiny wooden feet. By now, the neighbors had gone strange. Mrs. Esters stared at her mailbox for 10 minutes straight. The Haverleys trimmed their lawn at midnight, and the mailman never came anymore. At the next HOA meeting, Donna burst in with the journal in hand, waving it like scripture. "You all knew," she shouted. "You knew what you buried." They didn't shout back, just looked at her with the cool, resigned pity you'd give a drowning woman still clutching her anchor. "You shouldn't have dug," someone said. "The pact was peace. Now we've got to make it right." Or, someone else added, "the soil will." The house leaned further that night. Donna stood in the kitchen, one slipper off, listening to it settle like old bones. In the hallway, her husband's photo was upside down on the floor. She didn't pick it up. She dreamed of worms threading through the walls, soft child voices singing lullabies she didn't know the words to. When she woke, the floorboards were warm, and something moved beneath them. She tried to leave, packed the bag, started the car, drove 2 blocks. At the stop sign, the ground cracked, just a little, just enough. She turned back, engine smoking, eyes wet and furious. On the final night, Donna sat in her living room, surrounded by candles and silence. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know." The floor split beneath the coffee table. The windows went black. The soil had waited long enough. In the morning, there was only the garden, freshly tilled, still warm. The house was gone, but the soil had sealed itself, like nothing had ever risen at all. The end.
He heard himself speaking before he was fully asleep. Not in a dream, not out loud, he thought. It was inside, wet syllables unfurling like something ancient, something loosened. His own voice, shaped by a language he didn't know, didn't recognize, but it rose anyway, word after impossible word, dragging breath behind it. Noah Lewin had stopped dreaming years ago. Trauma does that, the doctor said once. Snaps off access to REM like a valve, seals it up, no refund. He tried pills, yoga, breathing apps. Nothing pierced it. So when Neurosomna offered a new trial, something experimental, he signed the waiver without blinking. The rules were simple. No talking, no questions, headphones at all times, even when alone. The facility was silent, padded, inhumanly still. Researchers wore gray, mouths hidden behind clear masks. Communication came only on white cards. Drink this. Sleep now. Good progress. On the second night, the machines freaked out. Alarms blinked without sound. Light pulsed red above his bed. The morning after, a new card awaited. Neural activation exceptional. Proceeding. He didn't remember dreaming, but his throat ached. His tongue was sore. By the fourth night, he woke himself mid-sentence. Not English. Not anything from any of the dozen languages he'd studied. He was a linguist. His brain mapped language like others mapped cities. But this wasn't mapped. This wasn't even made. He confronted one of the researchers, a thin woman with eyes like quartz. Wrote on a napkin, "What am I saying?" She read it, wrote back, "Limbic glossolalia, harmless." Limbic, emotional centers. Glossolalia, speaking in tongues. But his own recordings told another story. Noah borrowed Mara's tablet. She was another participant, mid-30s, shivering all the time, her eyes ringed with something worse than sleep loss. "I heard you last night," she said. "You screamed in reverse." He laughed. It sounded fake. "Help me get in the monitor room?" Her eyes darted. "It's locked." Not always. That night, while the rest slept under hums and soft white lights, Noah crept into the dark hallway. The door to observation had no lock. Not that night. Inside, wall screens lined the far end, looping silent footage from each room. He tapped until he found his. The footage showed him asleep, mouth slack, eyes twitching under lids. At first, there was nothing. Then his lips moved. He watched. No, he studied. His voice on the speakers wasn't neutral. It was pleading, whispering syllables that sounded like bone grinding in oil. Not speech, but an invocation. His own body tensed as each word landed, his hands curled tight as claws. Then the lights in his room blinked, just once, followed by a long shadow crawling across the far wall, one not cast by anything visible. Another feed, Mara's room, showed her sitting up in bed, eyes open and screaming without a sound. Noah recoiled. The feed jittered. His own voice, the one on screen, was escalating. Faster now, more urgent. Sweat glistened on his sleeping form. Then everything cut to black. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Mara was gone. Her bed stripped, clipboard missing. No one answered when he wrote, "Where is Mara?" on his card. They responded with, "Your neural pattern is unique. Stay calm." He stopped eating. His tongue still ached. On night 6, he waited. He watched the red diode blink above his bed, matching the rhythm of his pulse. He was wired again, headphones sealed tight, even though they emitted nothing but a faint click. This time, he kept himself awake just long enough to feel the change. The moment he began to slip, the words came, not like a dream, but like a tide. Ekrhane, Veshtal, Krunnaha. The syllables meant nothing, but they felt like they were building to something. Not grammar, but construction, a shape. Somewhere between sleep and waking, he understood. It was an address, and he was dialing it. When he awoke, the door was open. Not just unlocked, open, like someone had left in a hurry. Every hallway light buzzed low and red. Far down the corridor, he saw a body slumped against the glass. One of the researchers, fingers chewed to stumps, eyes rolled skyward. He ran. In the observation room, screens glitched. His feed live showed his bed empty, cords still twitching. He rewound. He watched. At 3:17 a.m., his sleeping self had sat up and spoken the phrase. One final word, the last of the incantation, and with it, everything changed. The wall behind his bed shimmered. No, it opened. Not cracked, not burned, bent. A blackness poured from the split like steam, but it wasn't steam. It pulsed, moved, and from it, a shape, not large, not grotesque, just wrong, like the idea of something living where it shouldn't. Its edges quivered like memory in pain. He watched it crawl from the wall toward the camera. Then the screen cut out. The last thing Noah remembered was silence, not absence of sound, suppression, like a hand clamping over the world's mouth. He woke on the floor. His mouth was open, his throat raw. He could feel something inside him, like words still echoing, waiting for space to bloom. Noah didn't return to his room. There was no point. He wandered the halls. All doors stood ajar. No staff, no signs of struggle, only wet footprints that ended in the center of the hallway and never turned back. He found a mirror in the hallway bathroom. He looked at himself. His lips were moving. He wasn't making sound, but the words were there. His voice wasn't his. It was speaking through him. Noah tried to scream, but the sound caught in his chest. He was still speaking. The words would not stop. And now, neither would what followed them. The end.
The rental car sputtered like it didn't want to go any farther. Dana Riles didn't blame it. The road into Marrow's Bend had always felt too narrow, like the trees were watching. She adjusted the mirror, but didn't look at herself. 20 years gone, and nothing had changed. The sign, "Welcome to Marrow's Bend, where roots grow deep," still leaned to one side, like it was tired of pretending. She drove past the hardware store with the rusting hammer sign, the diner where everyone drank burnt coffee, and the high school where her father used to teach shop class. Used to. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. She wasn't here to reconnect. She had no plans, no appointments. Just a single photograph slid under her apartment door 2 weeks ago. It showed her childhood house. Whole, clean, lit from inside like it had never known fire. But Dana knew. She remembered the smell of burning wallpaper, the way her father screamed as beams collapsed, the heat blistering her face. That house was supposed to be ash. But in the photo, the curtains were drawn just the way her mother used to leave them, like a signal. Dana didn't know what it meant, but she couldn't look away. Dana parked 3 blocks from the house. She couldn't bring herself to pull into the old driveway. Her breath fogged the windshield as she sat, watching it from a distance. It was identical. White siding, blue shutters. The porch swing still creaked in the breeze, though there wasn't any wind. Even the small crack on the 3rd step was there, exactly where she remembered tripping when she was 8. She approached slowly. A kid's tricycle rested near the front bushes. A sculpted raven, her raven, from her second gallery show, perched above the doorway, its metal wings caught mid-screech. She stepped onto the porch, and the door opened before she could knock. A woman stood there, smiling too wide. "Dana?" the woman asked, like greeting an old friend. "Oh, it's been so long." Dana blinked. The woman looked like her mother, older, worn down, but unmistakably her, except her mother had died in the hospital, slumped and empty. Dana had identified the body herself. The smell hit her next. Furniture polish and burnt wood. From inside, a girl's voice called, "Mom, who is it?" A man laughed from the kitchen. Dana's stomach dropped. That laugh, low and sharp, her father's. He had died screaming. He had died burning. Dana turned and walked away, not running, but almost. The woman's voice followed her. "Come back tomorrow. It's your turn." Dana didn't sleep that night. She lay on the motel bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the buzz of the neon vacancy sign just outside her window. Her hands smelled faintly of smoke, though she hadn't lit a match. She returned to the house at dawn. It was gone. Not burned. Gone. Just a dirt lot with an old tire swing swaying from a branch that no longer existed. She staggered back. Across the street, the bookstore's window flickered with movement. Her mother was inside, arranging shelves. The same blue cardigan, the same stiff fingers she used to hide shaking hands. Dana crossed the road, barely feeling her legs. She pressed her hand to the glass. Inside, her mother looked up and smiled. The store blinked. Just for a second, Books rearranged, shelves melted like wax, her mother's face blurred, shifting. Behind her on a high shelf, Dana saw something impossible. A sculpture she never finished, hands bound in smoke. She destroyed it years ago after a dream about her father's voice in the clay. She stumbled back. Behind her, the house was rebuilding. A single wall stood now, clean, fresh wood, no nails, no one around. Dana pressed her fingers to her temple. Her nose was bleeding, or maybe it wasn't. The blood tasted like copper and paint thinner. The house would be finished soon. Dana stood before the house on the third day, fully rebuilt now. Fresh white paint, curtains drawn just so. The porch swing swayed in rhythm with something she couldn't see. A soft thumping echoed from inside, familiar, like fists on wood. She stepped forward, barefoot. She hadn't remembered losing her shoes. The front door creaked open for her this time. Inside, it was exactly right, down to the cracked ceramic horse on the mantel. Her sculptures were everywhere, twisted and half melted, as though mid-scream. The air tasted of paint thinner and syrup. Her father's cologne. He sat in his old recliner, smiling, not burnt, not even aged. "You always had to destroy what you couldn't control," he said, voice smooth as varnish. "Now look at you, back where you belong." Dana shook her head. "You're dead." He laughed. "Only if you stop building me." The floor tilted slightly. Her sculptures turned their heads toward her. "You never left," her mother whispered from the kitchen, apron soaked in something red. "You just tried to cut yourself out of the story." Dana's knees buckled. The truth hit like flame. This house was memory's shape, rebuilt every time her guilt flared. She hadn't escaped. She'd paused. The cult hadn't failed. They'd made her a shrine, but the fire had been hers. "Stop rebuilding it," she whispered to herself. The walls cracked. "Stop remembering it right." The roof groaned. She ran her fingers across a nearby sculpture. Her hands sparked. And for the first time in 20 years, Dana screamed. Not from fear, but from the truth finally catching fire again. The house was ash again. Dana stood alone in the lot, wind stirring cold embers that weren't warm enough to feel. No smell, no smoke, just silence. A single sculpture remained, half sunken in soot, her kneeling, head bowed, hands open as if to offer something invisible. She didn't try to take it. Behind her, voices murmured in the wind, her father's laugh, her mother's humming, the sharp hiss of a match striking. She didn't turn around. She walked. Past the bookstore, past the flickering school. The trees leaned closer than before, but she didn't flinch. As she reached the edge of town, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One photo, the house, rebuilt, again. But this time she didn't stop walking. Some memories can't be burned, some houses rebuild themselves, and some doors never really close. The end. Elias Quay woke up for the 27th Monday in a row. He brushed his teeth with the same dull mint, poured coffee from the same corporate pot, took the same elevator with Barry from legal, who always laughed too loudly at exactly 9:03 a.m. The same PowerPoint about cybersecurity, the same lunch of dry turkey sandwich, same shriek of Susan's pen falling off her desk at 10:15. But Elias remembered every version, every sigh, every stumble, every microwaved sigh echoing down the hall. This wasn't deja vu. It was worse. At first, it was manageable. He could predict every conversation, preempt every disaster. He fixed misfiled contracts, prevented interpersonal meltdowns, even won a passive-aggressive email war with Deborah from HR. It felt empowering, like clarity. But on loop 16, the coffee was already brewed when he arrived. On loop 18, Susan's pen never fell. Her hand hovered midair, like she remembered it used to happen. Today, loop 27, he found a sticky note on his monitor. "Stop remembering. It breaks the seal." He didn't write it. Elias stared at the screen until his mouse cursor refused to move past a certain line of code in the compliance database. No error, just an invisible wall. He opened the break room fridge. Identical yogurts lined the shelf. All vanilla, all expiring today. Something was maintaining this place. With precision, with purpose. And then his office door clicked. It had a new lock, a third one. The first time he'd noticed the locks, loop 12, there was only one. Now each time he woke, another had appeared. He asked Barry about it. Barry blinked. "You're imagining things, Eli." "No, I'm not. Look." Elias pointed. "That wasn't there yesterday." Barry stared at the door, then at Elias and frowned. "It's Monday, man. You okay?" "You say that every day," Elias muttered. That night, though it never felt like night, he stayed in the office, watching cameras no one else seemed to know about. At 2:17 a.m., the monitors glitched. People moved in the dark, but not his people, not Barry, not Susan. Figures in suits with blurred faces, dragging something down the hallway. Something limp. He blinked, and they were gone. The next morning, Elias awoke in his chair. It was Monday again. Barry laughed at 9:03. Coffee was ready. The third lock clicked as he entered, and there on his desk was a manila folder he hadn't seen before. BCC log, instability markers, subject Quay E. Memory persistence, unacceptable, behavioral loop violation, loop 27, containment status, escalate. He stared. His hands trembled. BCC, behavioral containment construct. The words surfaced from nowhere like a memory someone else had buried inside his skull. He'd been here before the loops. There'd been an incident. No, a casualty event. That's what they'd called it. The firm had buried it under jargon and NDAs, but Elias had seen it in his nightmares. Blood on compliance checklists, fire alarms screaming through unblinking meetings, hands reaching through smoke. His mind had snapped, and they had caught it, captured it. Captured him, digitally. Contained. Stop remembering. It breaks the seal. The loop wasn't punishment, it was observation. And every time he remembered, they tightened the grip. He slammed his hand on the desk. I'm still me. I'm still real. The lights flickered. Everyone in the open plan office froze, mid-type, mid-bite, mid-laugh. Then, one by one, their heads turned, every eye fixed on him, and then reset. Elias woke up. Monday. Again. The locks on his door now 4. The post-it was gone, but the coffee mug, his coffee mug, had moved to the left edge of the desk. He never left it there. They wanted him to forget everything. He paced the corridor, tried every door. Nothing opened. The elevators buzzed with a static hum but never arrived. Even the fire exit had been bricked over. There was no escape. So he turned inward. He wrote a note on a napkin, folded it into the ceiling tile. The next morning, it was gone. He etched words into the bottom of his desk. They vanished. Every attempt to mark time was scrubbed. Subject continues non-compliant behavior. Implement restriction layer 5. The next reset brought silence. No laughter, no dropped pen, no sound, just eyes, watching. And in the break room mirror, a brief reflection, not his. The face blinked with 2 sets of eyelids, then smiled. That night, he found the final message. Not on paper, on the bathroom wall, written in condensation, vanishing fast. You're not in a loop, you're a recurrence. You broke. We copied you. You killed them. We're waiting to see if you'll break again. Remembering is a glitch. You must forget to be free. But when you forget, no one knows it's Monday. The condensation faded, and Elias whispered, then maybe it's better no one remembers. The next day, Elias Quay arrived at his office. It was Monday. The coffee was already brewed. Barry laughed at 9:03. Susan dropped her pen at 10:15. His door had 5 locks now, but Elias smiled politely and walked to his desk. There was no post-it, no folder, no panic. He didn't remember anything unusual, just another Monday. A new sticky note appeared behind his monitor. You're the only one who knows it's Monday. But this time, he didn't see it, and the loop continued. Forever. The end. Simone Day didn't believe in curses, only in stories desperate to be remembered. That's what she told herself when the mirror arrived, wrapped in yellowed linen and framed in mahogany so old it reeked of damp dirt and incense. A note, wedged behind its backing, simply read, from Gran Lida, keep it facing the east, never let it speak first. That last line should have chilled her. It didn't. She laughed instead, chalking it up to the usual blend of colonial mysticism and familial eccentricity. Simone was a student of ancient ritual, after all. An expert, supposedly, on the kind of oral culture that predated language itself. The mirror, with its warped glass and spidery veins under the surface, was just another object to study, another artifact in the quiet mausoleum of her apartment. The first ripple came during a blackout. It was late, one of those soft, humming silences after a storm. She lit a candle. The flame wavered as if exhaling, and in the momentary dance of light, the mirror didn't ripple, it breathed. She blinked, stepped closer. Her reflection stood wrong. Same clothes, same eyes, same tired smudge of eyeliner, but her hands were folded, and Simone's weren't. Then the reflection smiled. Simone did not. She turned off the candle. The mirror turned off too. In total darkness, she heard a whisper, low and skimming the back of her brain like a matchstick dragging on sandpaper. Simone. She found the notes 2 days later, buried behind a loosened plank in the mirror's frame. Fragile pages, edges burnt, full of strange pictograms and diagrams of faces half-sketched, with mouths open wide. The last note, scrawled in English, was from her great-grandmother. It doesn't know what you are unless you teach it. Don't repeat. Don't echo. Don't let it start the sentence. It learns fast. It listens better. Once it finishes the thought, you won't be the one thinking it anymore. Simone laughed it off with a tightness in her throat. Sleep had become fragmented, dreams heavy with water and glass. She began waking up with her thoughts already formed, as if someone had handed her a script just before her eyes opened. Once, during her morning routine, she muttered aloud, "Need to buy coffee." From the mirror, "Get oat milk too, you always forget." She froze. Her mouth had been closed. The voice had sounded exactly like hers. She started taping over the glass, papering it with notes. "Do not speak. You're not me. Remember who starts. It's a conversation you can't win." Still, in the dim hours before dawn, she'd hear it murmuring through the tape. The sound wasn't words, not quite. It was rehearsal. It was lips forming syllables just before her own. Her mind began to falter. One night, she called her ex by the wrong name, her reflection's name. She couldn't recall when she'd named it, or if it had named itself. She began filming herself. She'd play it back and find gaps, seconds gone, words she swore she never said. In one recording, she stared into the mirror and muttered, "You can have the voice, but not the thoughts." She had no memory of saying it. The final blackout hit on a Sunday. Rain poured like it was trying to drown the street lamps. Her apartment was lit by 2 dying candles. The mirror was uncovered. She didn't remember removing the paper. She stood in front of it, jaw tight, eyes red from days of sleep starvation and low-grade terror. Her reflection stood straighter, fresher. It smiled with her mouth. It blinked with her eyes, just before she could. Then it said, "Let's talk." Simone stepped back. The air thinned, and her thoughts scattered like leaves in a hurricane. She opened her mouth to scream, but the voice came from the mirror. "Don't. Just listen." She did. God help her, she did. Later, the neighbor said she saw Simone in the hallway around 3 a.m., humming. Said she looked different, hair combed, back straight, like she was finally sleeping again. Simone even smiled at her, said something in a voice that sounded a little too rehearsed. Simone, if that's who it was, never answered her door again. Inside the apartment, the mirror was gone. Just a scorch mark on the hardwood where it used to lean, as if something hot had stood there too long. The place was tidy, pristine, only one thing out of place. A handheld recorder sat on Simone's desk, still warm, still running. The last audio entry was just her voice, flat and slow. Never let it speak first. Never let it finish last. A long pause. Then a second voice, identical in tone, but smoother, more confident. "She was kind enough to teach me. I'll keep talking now." The recorder clicked off by itself. The end. The hallway light buzzed like a dying fly. It flickered every few seconds, just enough to catch the edge of your eye, not enough to see by. Raphael, freshly moved into Unit 4B, had already complained twice to management. He wasn't trying to be difficult. He was trying to stay clean, stay quiet, stay out of the system's grip. Probation didn't like noise or complaints. The tenement on Saratoga Avenue leaned like it had secrets. The hallways smelled like damp plaster and microwave dinners. His neighbor across the hall, an old man with cloudy eyes and a green bathrobe, muttered prayers at night, loud enough to seep through the thin walls. But Raphael liked it here. The rules were simple. Pay rent, stay inside after dark. Don't ask questions. He'd been here 3 weeks. Clean. Working part-time unloading at the grocery, sleeping better than he had in years. His roommate, Danny, barely talked but paid half the rent and never ate Raphael's food. It was working, until Tuesday morning. The alarm went off. Raphael rolled over. Danny's bed was made, neat, empty. By noon, the room was clean like no one had ever been there at all. That afternoon, Raphael stood in the doorway, staring at the twin-sized bed across the room. No sheets, no pillow, no sign Danny had ever slept there. The extra toothbrush was gone. The towel on the back of the door, gone. Even the dent in the carpet from Danny's laundry basket had sprung back. He checked his phone. No photos of Danny. Not one. He remembered taking some. First night, they'd eaten Chinese takeout on the floor and toasted with ginger ale. He'd snapped a picture of Danny holding up the cracked fortune cookie like it was gold. Gone. He called the landlord. My roommate's missing. A pause. Then coldly, you don't have a roommate. Your lease is single occupancy. You signed it. Raphael checked the drawer where they'd shoved their lease. His name stood alone. That night, the hallway light flickered longer than usual, long enough to cast shadows against the wall. As he locked the door, he saw it. He saw it. A silhouette too tall, arms too long, gliding across the wall behind the peeling paint. It moved like it was walking behind the drywall. Fluid, slow. Raphael blinked, gone. He pressed his ear to the wall. A faint scraping, like fingertips. The next night, Raphael dragged his mattress from the wall. He couldn't sleep, not with the sounds. They weren't mice. Mice didn't whisper. Mice didn't breathe. He grabbed his screwdriver and began prying at the drywall. Soft flakes came off in chunks. Beneath the paint and plaster, he found it. A patch of dark wood, carved with notches, dozens of them. Dates, initials, uneven tally marks running in jittery columns. RM, 1978, one read. D. Ray's, 1982. Some went as recent as last year. He stumbled back, breathing fast. The hallway light flickered again, and this time he saw the shadow linger. It paused outside his door, hand pressed against the wall. The shape didn't break. It slid along the inside like it was the wall. The door rattled. He bolted it, wedged a chair, turned every light on. The next morning, maintenance was outside. A guy in a jumpsuit painting over a large wet patch in the hallway wall, thick with plaster. Raphael asked what happened. The man didn't look up. Water damage, he said, voice flat. These old buildings, things shift around. Raphael glanced at the wall. A footprint. Bare, heel sinking outward like someone had stepped through. Raphael stopped going to work. He spent hours pressing his ear to the walls, tracing notches with trembling fingers, reading names out loud like prayers. His voice cracked when he reached Danny's. He wasn't crazy. He remembered Danny, the fortune cookie, the knock-knock jokes, the hum he made when he cooked ramen. But the walls, they were hungrier than memory. He bought a drill from the pawn shop. By night, he cut deeper into the drywall behind his bed. Behind the panel was a gap, not an insulation pocket, a space, just wide enough for a man to slide through sideways. The air that came out was warm, wet. Breathing, inside more carvings, scratched in haste. Desperate, he watches for new rooms. If they say you live alone, run. The landlord knows. Behind him, a whisper. Raphael turned. The lights went out. From the slit in the wall, a hand reached. Skin gray, fingers bone-thin, joints bending wrong. The arm unfolded endlessly, joint after joint. Raphael screamed. The hand didn't grab, it pressed, palm against Raphael's chest, then pushed. The drywall behind him opened like wet cloth. The last thing he saw before he slid through was his own lease on the floor. Only his name. A week later, the unit was rented again. A quiet woman with tired eyes signed the lease. She asked about the second bedroom. The landlord smiled and said, "This is a one-bedroom unit." She nodded, unpacked, slept. The hallway light still flickered. Inside the wall behind her bed, carvings waited. Names, dates, one new message still damp in the wood. Raphael, 2024. He's in here with me. The hallway light went out, and from deep within the drywall, something moved, slowly, patiently, looking for the next vacancy. The end. At 3:03 a.m., the return slot clattered. A soft thud. Just one book. No wind outside. No footsteps. No car in the staff lot. Just the sound of something coming back. Lily blinked at the grainy footage on her laptop. She paused the tape, froze the frame. There she was, wearing a vintage coat with shoulder pads and white gloves, her hair done in stiff waves, her face unreadable. She watched herself push the same book through the slot. "Please return to her," the cover read. No barcode, no author, no call number. Just a book that didn't belong to any system. She watched herself turn, then walk through the concrete wall. She first found it Monday morning. nestled between a paperback romance and a murder mystery. She laughed at the title like it was a prank. She shelved it in the lost and found behind the circulation desk. The next day, it was back. She asked James, the day shift librarian, if he'd seen someone return it. He shrugged. Didn't notice. You sure you shelved it? She was. She remembered the way her fingers itched when she touched the cover, like static shock. Wednesday night, she placed it in her tote and zipped it shut. She even put it in her car. The next morning, it was in the bin again. Thursday night, she stayed late and reviewed security footage. She didn't expect what she saw. She returned it. Every time. At exactly 3:03 a.m., different clothes. Sometimes older, sometimes younger, but always her. One night, she wore a hospital gown. One night, a yellow raincoat. One time, she wasn't even walking, just appearing frame by frame like a glitch. One recording had no audio, but her mouth moved. Lily leaned in. I'm still trying to return. She set up motion detectors, 8 of them, covered the whole circulation area, bought a second set of cameras, better ones. She programmed the sensors to ping her phone. At 3:04 a.m., the alert went off. She rushed downstairs, barefoot, heart racing, nothing, just the book. Sitting alone, no door open, no window broken. She checked the tapes. She had entered from the fire exit, barefoot, wearing her grandmother's nightgown. She placed the book gently, then looked up, directly into the camera. She whispered something. The mic didn't catch it, but she read her own lips. Please, make me stop. The book changed. At first it was blank. Then the pages filled, messy, uneven handwriting. Hers. She flipped to the first entry. November 8th, I keep dreaming about a girl behind the shelves. She hums but doesn't move. I wake up bleeding from the mouth. She didn't write that. She never wrote that. The next entry. November 9. Paper cutter blade was dull. I shouldn't have pressed so hard. Thumb split open. She checked her thumb. A scab. She didn't remember injuring it. Another entry. November 10. Book truck wheel will catch on the rug. You'll fall. You'll pretend you didn't twist your ankle, but it will swell anyway. That happened that morning. She found the storage box in a locked cabinet, labeled Echo Program Therapy Files 2007. Her name was there. Subject number 03, Lillian Ames, Temporal Therapy Pilot. The summary was brief. Patients wrote regrets, fears, and unspeakable memories into fabricated return books. The idea was to exorcise trauma by surrendering it to a closed system. But it didn't close. She found intake notes. She had been the first to complete a full cycle. Symptoms, sleepwalking, dissociative states, recursive memory loops, facility closure date, unknown. The building had been scheduled for demolition in 2009, but it never happened. Somehow, the library stayed. She had been living in a remnant. Friday night, she made a plan. She would stay up, block every door, duct tape the return slot shut, sleep in the office with the lights on, film herself. She drank black coffee. Took no meds. 2:45 a.m., nothing. 3 a.m., stillness. 3:03 a.m., her body jerked forward. She didn't remember closing her eyes. She woke up inside the return bin, legs folded against the metal, the book balanced on her knees, the lid shut over her like a coffin. The camera outside showed the lid open by itself. Her hand pushed the book through, pale, veined, a ring on her finger. She didn't own a ring like that. Saturday morning, the final page had changed, blank, except for one thing. November 11th, do not open the door behind reference. No matter who knocks, no matter what voice it uses. It isn't your mother. She didn't want to believe it. She'd stopped trusting mirrors, stopped answering calls. Her mother had been dead since 2014. That didn't stop the voice. It knocked at 3:03 a.m. She didn't answer. Not at first. The knocking got louder, then slower. Then, Lily, I'm cold. Please, let me in. You said you'd come back for me. She stood behind the desk, shaking. She knew that voice. The same lilt, the same rasp on L's. She gripped the book in both hands. The voice changed. Let me out. She opened the door. Nothing there, except her, not older, not younger, the same age, same hair, same eyes. She held the same book, only her mouth was sewn shut. The other Lily dropped the book and walked backward into the dark, disappeared like smoke. The book lay open, its final line written in blood. I returned everything. Why won't she let me go? Sunday morning, the library was gone. Just a cracked parking lot, a no trespassing sign, a wall of weeds. She sat on the curb with the book in her lap. No one saw her. No one waved. The final page turned by itself. November 12th, you're almost done. Just one more return. Her reflection in the dark cover wasn't hers. The book was heavier now. The end. Darren Michaels woke up in the ER with the smell of smoke still clinging to his skin. The nurse smiled too wide. Her hands trembled when she handed him the release papers. "You're lucky," the doctor said, eyes not quite meeting his. "Car's totaled, but you're somehow fine." Outside, his wife hugged him, stiff and formal, like she was greeting a stranger. The kids stared at him from the back seat, quiet. When they got home, his dog, a mutt named Diesel, loyal for 9 years, stood in the doorway, growled low, and bolted upstairs. Darren chuckled awkwardly. "Guess he's never seen me wrapped in bandages." Nobody laughed. That night, he caught his reflection lagging behind. Just a second, enough to notice. He frowned, stepped left. The reflection followed, late but smiling. 2 days later, the hospital sent him a bill for an autopsy. His name, his date of birth. Time of death, 7:44 a.m., the exact time the crash happened. He called them. The woman on the line checked, paused. "Sir, our records show no admission under that name. You just billed me for my own autopsy." She hung up. His wife stopped asking how he felt. She just looked at him when he wasn't looking, hands clenched, eyes wet. Diesel wouldn't eat unless Darren left the room. At night, Darren began hearing whispers. "Micah, Micah, where are you?" That wasn't his name. At work, his buddy Ed pulled him aside. "I saw the crash report, man. Your car was... There's no way anyone got out." "I did." "I watched the news clip," Ed said. "There were 2 of you." "What?" "One was crawling out. Other was, well, dead." Darren laughed. "You sure you weren't drunk again?" Ed didn't laugh. "They showed it once, then the feed cut, then it was gone." The mirrors started sinking again, but he could feel something watching from inside them. Then the letter came. Unmarked envelope, no return address. Just a sentence on a single sheet. "You weren't saved. You were duplicated." Darren threw it out. Then he dug through the trash at 3 a.m. to get it back. The next morning he smelled smoke in the kitchen, but nothing was burning. Heard tires squealing outside, but the road was empty. He reached for his coffee and flinched. The mug was too hot, scalding, though it had sat untouched for 10 minutes. The world didn't feel real. It felt remembered. He saw his son Jake, staring at him during breakfast. "Dad," the boy said, "why do your eyes look different now?" That night, he dreamed of a river of blood winding through twisted wreckage. In the center, a man sat calmly, charred, broken, but smiling. He opened his mouth and spoke in Darren's voice. "I didn't ask you to take this from me." Darren woke to the sound of Diesel snarling at the closet. When he opened it, nothing was there. But the smell of burnt flesh lingered for hours. He drove back to the hospital. Security stopped him at the desk. "Sir, I told you last time, this facility has no record of your visit. Please leave." "I was here," Darren hissed. "Not according to the footage. I want to see it." After an hour, a junior tech led him into a small dark room. The crash footage played on a grainy screen. Darren watched. One man him was being wheeled into the ER, limp. Another version, bleeding and dazed, stumbled into the hospital on foot 30 seconds later. 2 Darrens, he backed away from the screen. Then he noticed the logo in the corner, Project Echo. The feed cut to black. In the hallway, an older nurse brushed past and murmured, "You're not the first, you won't be the last. They don't save you, they reconstruct what's left, thought by thought." "What am I?" She looked at him. A rerun. Darren stumbled out, head reeling. He drove home. The walls of his house felt too narrow. His wife greeted him warmly. The kids hugged him. Diesel wagged his tail. Something was wrong. It was too normal. That night, he stared at the mirror. His reflection stared back. He whispered, "Who are you?" The reflection smiled. The man who was supposed to live. It reached out from the glass. Darren screamed as a burning sensation lanced through his chest. He woke on the kitchen floor. His family was there, concerned, loving. His dog licked his hand. Everything was fine, but he felt empty. Later, sitting alone on the porch, he looked at his reflection in the window. It moved in perfect sync now. But something behind the eyes flickered. Inside his mind, a whisper coiled softly. One thought at a time. The end. Sarah Lynn never walked home the same way twice. It started as a superstition, then became a rule, not just a habit, an algorithm. She'd tweak her routes by half a block, then a full street, mapping the curves of the city like veins in a restless body. As a digital cartographer for a GPS anomaly analytics startup, she called it urban drift. But deep down, it was something else. She'd been lost once when she was 6. The memory was hazy, muffled like voices under snow, but she remembered the panic. How trees can start looking like people, and people like trees. This new neighborhood, Zone 7C on the internal system, was tagged with too many red flags, failed coverage, warped satellite imagery, even some flagged missing persons from the 80s. Cartographic Bermuda Triangle, her coworker joked over Slack. Sarah just smiled and laced up her boots. By day 4, her phone was glitching in odd loops. Heat maps twisted into tight curls. Pins disappeared. A shoe she saw hanging from a power line one day was on a different street the next. She chalked it up to faulty updates, but day 6 was different. That evening, as dusk dipped the houses into a hazy indigo, Sarah took a right on Maplehurst, then a left on Doyle, then, somehow, she was back on Maplehurst. She frowned, checked her phone, compass spinning like a roulette wheel. GPS dead. She turned another corner, again Maplehurst, same cracked curb, same rusted mailbox, same row of motionless homes. Her chest tightened. She turned left, then left again. Basic logic, a circle. But each time, she landed on the same cul-de-sac. This one was different. It wasn't on her map. The houses were slumped, windows papered or black. In the center of the road sat a small, concrete island, cracked and overgrown. And all around the island were shoes, dozens of them, maybe 100, all sizes, all pairs, neatly lined, all facing the same direction, toward a boarded window of the duplex at the far end. The hair on her neck prickled. Sarah stepped forward, slow. She reached for her phone, no signal. She raised her compass. It spun, faster now, like it was being dragged. She heard footsteps behind her, turned. Nothing, only the quiet hum of evening. A soundless, pregnant quiet. No bugs, no wind, not even the usual city murmur. She turned back to the duplex and froze. In the second-story window, behind a slit in the boarded slat, something was looking out. No, someone. Her, but not her. The face was hers, yes. Same high cheekbones, same thick lashes, but older, worn down, paler. She had shadows under her eyes that seemed to sink into bone. The double didn't move, just watched. Sarah stumbled backward. The shoes remained, still facing forward, as if awaiting a cue. "I'm dreaming," she said aloud, voice cracking. "Stress hallucination, I'll wake up." She took another street, then another. Trees leaned inward. Her own footstep echoed back seconds before she moved. The cul-de-sac returned. The window blinked. She began to cry. Not sobs, but that shallow, dry kind of crying that cracks around the edges. She banged on doors. No one answered. Each house was the same inside. Furniture faded like it had sat for decades. Empty photo frames. Some houses had duplicate items from her own apartment. A dish, a scarf, a book. One had her coffee mug. Her name on the side in chipped gold. By now, the sun had fully vanished. But the sky above the cul-de-sac glowed dull blue, like it was stuck in a loop, refusing night. Desperate, she returned to the duplex. She kicked the door open. Inside, dust and silence, wallpaper peeling like skin. Upstairs, she found a room, her room, but not quite, older, as if lived in for years. Photos on the wall showed her at various ages, but she didn't remember the moments, didn't recognize the clothes. A journal on the desk, her handwriting, page after page of the same words. Never walk home the same way twice. It learns, it remembers, it watches. In the mirror above the dresser, she saw her face again, but not young, not her. The reflection smiled, then everything turned black. She woke up in her apartment, back in real time. The city buzzed outside. Her phone vibrated, a Slack message from her boss asking for an update. She replied shakily. When she checked her walking history, the GPS logs showed she hadn't moved for 4 hours. Her heart punched her ribs. She opened her photos, blank. She looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Same face. No, was it? Later that night, she packed a bag, called a friend to stay over, said she needed a break, a real vacation. Her voice trembled. She left the apartment and found herself standing in the cul-de-sac. Shoes, compass, window, her. The reflection smiled again, waved. She didn't scream. She couldn't. Behind her, footsteps echoed. Slow, deliberate, shoes on pavement. She turned around, no one. She turned back, and she was gone. Later, the apartment was found undisturbed, phone on the table, GPS logs empty. The zone was cleared for redevelopment, the cul-de-sac paved over. But new tenants report shoes on the lawn, doors that don't open, windows that show different skies, and sometimes at dusk, someone sees a girl walking in circles, over and over. Each time she chooses a different path home, but the neighborhood remembers. Always. The end. Leon Ramirez held the bottle up to the kitchen light. The pills inside shimmered faintly, like they knew something he didn't. His hand, once shaky from the Parkinson's, held still, steady as stone. That was the strange part. The neurologist had said the tremors would only worsen, that early onset moved quickly. But 1 week into the new pharma program, and Leon felt 20 years younger. The medication came in a plain white box, stamped confidential study program. The return address was smudged out by some chemical. Still, they were free. They worked. On day 6, he walked to the corner store to buy eggs. "Morning, Dave," he said to the man sweeping the sidewalk. The man looked up, confused. "Sorry, do I know you?" Leon blinked. "Dave, it's me, Leon. I live right there." He pointed to the brown house with the sagging porch. Dave stared a beat longer, then gave a polite nod and turned away. Later, he noticed the picture frames in the hallway held landscapes. No family, no photos. He asked his wife Marissa about it as she dried her hands with a dish towel. "Marissa, where's the photo of us at the lake? The one with the dog, remember?" She frowned. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Leon laughed. "Very funny." She didn't laugh back. "Get out of my house." Leon stood outside the brown house until the porch light clicked off. His key no longer fit the lock. The windows looked the same, but when he peered through them, the furniture wasn't his. The walls were painted a shade lighter. A child's bicycle leaned near the fence. He didn't have kids. He slept in his truck that night, wrapped in a faded army blanket, his mind buzzing. He tried to call Marissa the next morning. Her number wasn't saved. His phone showed no recent calls, no texts. His email password, one he'd used for years, was suddenly wrong. He drove to his neurologist's office, fists clenched. The receptionist gave him a puzzled look. "You're not in our system, miss." "Ramirez, Leon Ramirez." She clicked through her screen. "We've never had a patient by that name." "What about the study? The new medication?" "There's no study, and Dr. Kellerman passed away last fall." Panic pooled in his chest. He stumbled outside, the daylight too bright, too loud. That night, he searched his truck for the pill bottle. Inside the white box, under the cotton padding, he found something new, a label, torn and worn, stuck to the underside of the lid. It was written in his own blocky handwriting. "Do not miss a dose. He'll notice." Leon sat in the driver's seat, the bottle trembling in his hands. He didn't remember writing that, but he knew his own handwriting, and he didn't know who he was. Day 7. Leon parked in an empty lot beneath a broken street lamp. He hadn't taken the pill yet. The bottle sat on the dash, glowing faintly under the flickering light. He stared into the rearview mirror, watching his own eyes. They didn't blink when he did. He raised his hand. The reflection followed, perfectly timed. But then it smiled. He didn't. Heart thudding, Leon grabbed the bottle. He twisted the cap off with shaking hands and lifted a pill. His reflection lifted one too. But Leon hadn't moved. "No," he whispered. The man in the mirror tilted his head, examining him like a specimen. His smile widened, cruel, familiar. The pill disappeared behind his reflection's lips. Swallowed, gone. Leon dropped the pill in his own hand. It felt suddenly heavy, like it knew it was too late. The world wavered. The truck interior stretched like taffy. His reflection blurred and split, doubling, tripling, then fusing back into one. That thing wore his face, but sharper, more alive, more sure of itself. And he remembered. He remembered a white room, a chair bolted to the floor. Electrodes on his scalp, men in uniforms nodding. The word partition whispered again and again. The pills weren't medicine. They were a barrier. He had volunteered. Or maybe the other him had. A voice echoed in his skull, not spoken, just present. "Thanks for keeping the seat warm," Leon screamed, but only in his mind. Outwardly, the man in the mirror grinned and started the truck. Leon sat behind his own eyes, weightless and watching. The other, him, not him, drove the truck through winding back roads like he'd done it 1,000 times. He hummed an old army cadence. Every so often, he glanced at the mirror, where Leon still floated, silent, trapped. "You really thought the pills were for you?" the other said aloud, casually. "You were the shell. I was the core. They just needed to keep you quiet while they finished building me." Leon tried to scream, but no sound came. He couldn't feel his mouth. The truck stopped in front of a gate with no markings. Beyond it, darkness, floodlights, and shadows moving behind tall fences. The other opened the pill bottle and palmed the last tablet. Leon pushed. With every ounce of will, he pushed. The other's hand froze. The pill hovered. "I wouldn't," he whispered to himself. "No, to Leon." Then he laughed. He tossed the pill onto the ground, crushed it under his heel. Inside the mirror, Leon opened his eyes. But whose hands were on the wheel now? The end. They always smiled when they told her not to go up there. Harper Wren, 35 and recently unraveled, moved into Sycamore Heights in early spring, when the sky was too blue to feel honest. The building stood 3 stories tall and curved at its edges like it was afraid to be noticed. Her apartment smelled faintly of bleach and lavender when she moved in, and the neighbors welcomed her with fruit baskets and suspiciously warm casseroles. They all said the same thing, in almost the same tone. "Don't worry about the rooftop, it's sealed. After the accident, they shut it down, safety and all." She hadn't asked about the roof. Harper edited grant applications and scientific journals from home. She liked silence. But on the first Tuesday night of the month, every month, something shifted. Lights dimmed, voices murmured beyond her walls. Then the creaking of footsteps, slow, measured, on the stairs above her unit. Someone jiggled a lock. Click. Silence. 1 month. 2. By the 3rd, she stopped pretending to ignore it. May from 3B had eyes like stagnant water and a tendency to pause in conversation mid-sentence, staring at the ceiling as if expecting it to open. The handyman, Rick, always chuckled too hard and changed the subject when she asked about building plans. "Roof access was sealed after '92, he said. "Insurance thing." But Harper found the city records. No mention of a rooftop door. The blueprints ended at the 3rd floor ceiling. Still, every month, click, creak, silence. She started to mark the calendar. First Tuesdays, midnight. It was 12:01 when she slipped out barefoot, hugging the stairwell wall. They hadn't seen her. She crouched in the dark, watching the last tenant vanish through the fire door marked exit, alarmed. No alarm sounded. She pushed the door. It opened soundlessly, and beyond it wasn't a rooftop. It was a slab, a flat, endless concrete field under a sky too black to be called night. There were no stars, no city sounds. The air was wrong, thick like syrup and too quiet. The skyline flickered, a broken loop of distant buildings that did not align. Her neighbors stood in rows, backs bent, facing outward. At the center, a mass hovered, just outside focus, shifting as though it wore dozens of bodies at once. It pulsed, not with sound, but with recognition. Harper stumbled. Someone caught her elbow. "May, you weren't supposed to come," she whispered. "What is this?" Harper croaked. "We watch, we forget, that's the deal." May's face didn't move as she spoke. "We give it memory. In return, it sleeps." The others began to hum, low and wet like submerged engines. One by one, they knelt. The shape in the sky rippled. It had no edges, no face, just suggestion. And then it looked at her. "You're the only one it doesn't recognize," May said. "You're the failsafe." Harper backed away. Her own voice whispered in her ears. Memories, fragments of childhood, the smell of her father's jacket, the last words her mother said. She hadn't thought of those things in years. They were being pulled from her, thread by thread. "You can't see it and go back," May said. Harper turned, but the door was gone. The building, the stairwell erased behind blank sky, only the watchers, only the humming, only it. The thing unfolded. It showed her herself, her childhood, her regrets, her aloneness. It wasn't attacking, it was understanding. But every second she stood, it learned more. And every secret she'd hidden from even herself now circled her in a slow orbit, faces etched from guilt. The others dropped flat to the concrete, unmoving. Harper screamed. She screamed until her voice broke, and then she knelt. There was no ceremony, no final words. The thing reached inside her without touch and took. It took her memories. It took her name. It took her anger, her tired bones, her father's laughter, her favorite color. It drank her down to silence. When Harper Wren woke, she was lying on her living room floor. The roof was locked. Her reflection in the hallway mirror blinked a second too late. A new neighbor moved in downstairs that afternoon. Young girl, bright eyes. Harper met her in the hallway, casserole in hand. "We don't go to the roof," Harper said, smiling too much. "Not after the accident." Behind her eyes, something blinked. Something remembered. The end. Isaac had worked the night shift for 7 months, alone with a keyring and a company-issued flashlight. The building, a decaying 40-story shell of 1980s optimism, moaned and creaked with the weight of decades. He called it the monument to paperwork. No one laughed, not even him. Tonight, security handed him the usual clipboard, but paused before he turned away. "Skip floor 13, the guard muttered without eye contact. "Doesn't exist." Isaac blinked. Then why skip it? Exactly. He stepped into the elevator. Floor buttons lit up one by one as the machine hummed. When he reached floor 12, he expected the usual jump to 14. Instead, the panel glitched. The light blinked, then landed on a number that wasn't raised or engraved, just faintly there. The doors opened. A breath of cold air slipped through the crack like it had been waiting. The hallway stretched long and featureless. No windows, no light, except the flicker of a dying fluorescent. All the doors were black, metal, industrial, all locked except one. A small plaque read, "Audit Room." Inside, a tangle of cables, shelves of reel-to-reel players, the hiss of white noise. One tape spun slowly, came a voice. His voice. "I didn't mean to hurt them. I swear I thought the fire was out." Isaac froze. His knees gave slightly. He'd never said those words, but it was undeniably him. The lilt, the slight stutter on swear. Another tape clicked on. "I watched the man bleed. I didn't help. I just watched. His stomach turned. She was screaming. I shut the door." The third tape had a woman's voice. She was crying. "Isaac, why didn't you help?" The reels spun faster, spooling sound like thread pulled from a throat. He didn't remember leaving the room, but now he stood in the hallway. The elevator was gone. The plaque on the audit room had changed. Reclamation. The next day, Isaac asked the morning shift guard about floor 13. The man laughed. "Old buildings always skip 13. Bad luck." "No," Isaac said. "I was on it last night." "You work the elevator, right?" "Yeah." The guard leaned in. "Then maybe it works you." He tried not to return, but on the third night, the elevator stopped at 13 again, on its own. His finger hovered over the closed door button, but his hand shook. The hallway was darker now. Doors lined both walls. The audit room was waiting. Inside, more tapes, new ones, labeled with names he almost remembered, bosses, co-workers, his mother. Their voices intercut with his, discussing crimes, regrets, murders, embezzlements, betrayals. Some tapes were blank, others bled audio like wounds. His reflection in the old glass machine was wrong, slightly off, older, mouth twitching before it moved. In one corner, a red light blinked above a door he hadn't seen before. A fresh label. On the 6th night, the tape stopped playing. Instead, a new one began recording. His breath echoed back at him. A voice, flat, familiar, not quite human, asked, "Isaac, do you accept what you've done?" "I haven't done anything," he whispered. The tape whirred. Lie detected. "I don't remember. Memory is not absolution." Silence followed. It pressed into his ears like water, like guilt given form. Then, "You weren't hired, you were returned." He ran. The elevator opened to the lobby, but it wasn't the one he knew. The colors were wrong. Monitors lined the walls. On one, he saw himself, dragging something wrapped in plastic. Another showed him laughing at a funeral. Another, standing in a flame-lit room, watching shadows burn. A woman sat behind a desk. She wore no ID. "Welcome back to processing, Mr. Voss," she said. "My name's Isaac." She tilted her head. "If that helps." Behind her, a glass wall revealed a library of tapes, every shelf labeled in precise handwriting. The name Voss, Isaac A., spanned 12 feet. Your guilt was stored here, temporarily. It has degraded. He shook his head. "This isn't mine." "Isn't it?" The lights dimmed. Somewhere, a tape snapped. Somewhere else, another began. He returned every night, but not by choice. The elevator made the decision. Sometimes it took him to the audit room. Sometimes the reclamation hall. Once he found a room of chairs facing a screen playing his dreams, narrated in his voice, but with thoughts he'd never thought. He no longer knew what was memory and what was residue. One night he found a note on a clipboard in the audit room. His handwriting. If you're reading this, you've accepted it. Good. You're beginning to remember. You were part of the pilot program. You volunteered. You thought guilt could be shelved, sanitized, that it wasn't part of who you are. You were wrong. You're back because the shelves are breaking. On the back, 3 words in red: stay, record, absorb. Now when Isaac speaks, his voice isn't always his. Sometimes it's layered, echoed. Sometimes it apologizes when he doesn't mean to. Sometimes he hears himself speaking before his mouth moves. He knows the building isn't real anymore, or maybe it never was. He's not sure what part of him is left, but the silence is always there, waiting, growing louder, the end. Emily Faye hadn't been to Maple Grove since she was 8, and if she had her way, she wouldn't be here now. But a lawyer's letter, yellowed like old teeth, had arrived last month declaring her the sole heir to a farmhouse left by her maternal grandmother, Grace Faye, deceased. Which was strange, because Emily had always been told her grandmother died in 1972. The terms were clear. She had to live there for 1 month before she could sell it. Standard rural clause, the lawyer had said. Bit superstitious maybe, but nothing sinister. She arrived on a cloudy Tuesday with a single suitcase and a plan to leave the minute the clock hit 30 days. The house stood at the end of a dirt lane, gray and hunchbacked, its windows like closed eyes. Inside, everything smelled faintly of dust and lavender, like an old purse. The kitchen was functional. The bedrooms upstairs were small and cold, all except one, the guest room. The door was closed, but the smell seeped through, bleach and something sweet. She opened it and stopped cold. The entire room was red, not painted red exactly, drenched. The walls, the ceiling, the furniture. A thick matte crimson coat that seemed too dense to be ordinary paint. The floorboards glistened darkly, as if they'd once soaked up something wet and ugly. Even the window panes shimmered faintly red in the sun. She called the realtor, a nervous man named Paul. That room was beige, he said. Beige and empty. It's blood red now, glossy, textured, the bed, the dresser, all of it. Impossible, he said. No one's touched that house in 20 years. The contractor she hired came up the drive, took one look at the room, and refused to step inside. One mumbled, "Don't stir what's settled." Then they left. That night she slept in the red room. The dreams started immediately. She was 5 again, locked in the room, screaming. Her fists pounded the inside of the red door. On the other side stood her parents, staring at her silently, unmoving, watching. The red bled into her mouth, metallic and bitter. The dream ended the same each time, her grandmother's voice whispering, "Forget it, child. Forget or it'll eat you alive." She woke gasping, drenched in sweat, her pillow streaked with a red stain that hadn't been there when she laid down. By the 4th night, she found the photographs, tucked inside the dresser drawer beneath a moth-eaten quilt, brittle with age. Photos of her, unmistakably 5 or 6 years old, standing in the red room. In some, she was smiling. In others, her eyes were wide with something else, fear, confusion. Behind her in one, blurred but clear enough, was a shadowed figure in a floral dress, Grace Faye. Emily stared at the pictures for hours, searching for the seams. Photoshop? No. They were too old for that. Real film, real memory. Except she didn't remember any of it. She drove into town, asked questions at the library. Public records said Grace Faye had died in 1972. But buried in the microfilm was a single article from 1983, local woman committed after incident with minor. The photo was grainy, but it was her grandmother, her hair long and wild, her eyes burned out. The librarian looked over Emily's shoulder and said softly, "That house keeps its secrets. Always has." Back at the farmhouse, Emily sat in the red room. She didn't try to sleep. Instead, she breathed in the bleach-heavy air and closed her eyes. This time, she remembered. The chanting, the candles, her grandmother's voice, rhythmic and low, her parents standing on either side of her, the sharp pain in her palm, the way the red room pulsed, alive, fed by fear. It hadn't been a punishment. It had been a ritual, and Emily had been the offering. She opened her eyes. The walls seemed to move, undulating slightly, like the inside of a living lung. The red pulsed in time with her heartbeat. She tried to leave. The door didn't open. She screamed, just as in the dreams. Her voice bounced back at her, muffled. Her hands clawed at the red walls, which flexed under her touch like scar tissue. From the corner, a ticking sound began, faint and familiar. No clocks in the room, no time in the room. Then her parents' faces appeared in the red, eyes carved hollow, mouths unmoving, and behind them her grandmother, whispering, "Now you remember, now it's complete." Morning came. The door creaked open. The room was beige again, empty. Emily stood in the hallway, shivering. In her hands, a photograph. It hadn't been there the night before. It showed her, in the red room, smiling. Her eyes were rimmed red, but she was smiling. Behind her in the mirror stood Grace Fay, mouth open in a silent scream. Emily fled the house that afternoon. At the town diner, she handed the keys to Paul, the realtor. "Sell it. Burn it. I don't care," she said. "That room," he raised a hand. "You didn't paint that room red," he said calmly, as if repeating something old and practiced. "That room's always been beige." But she noticed, just before he tucked the keys away, the faint maroon tint under his fingernails. The end. The sea had always unsettled Rebecca Yao. Not the waves or storms, but the way it stretched too far, holding too many secrets just below the surface. She stood at the base of the rust-dulled cargo ship the Meridian as dusk bled into the water. A clipboard tucked under her arm, tablet charged, boots clean. She was ready for another night of boring forms and gruff men. Just a bureaucratic snag. One misplaced customs seal had stalled a week's worth of shipments. All she had to do was cross-reference manifests, inspect quarters, and get back to the mainland before noon. The captain greeted her with the weary stiffness of someone too tired to fake politeness. "All 20 accounted for," he said, tapping the paper she handed him. No extras, no strays. But her eyes lingered on the manifest. 21 names. The last one, Laurent Zheng, didn't match any ID, shift log, or security badge. "That's a typo, right?" she asked. The captain frowned. Never had a Laurent on board. The ship creaked beneath her as she stepped up the gangway. Cold air curled around her ankles. Something felt off. But it was just numbers, wasn't it? Just numbers. Rebecca moved methodically, checked bunk tags, verify rations, log timestamps. The crew gave polite nods but never lingered. They didn't offer coffee. They didn't ask questions. The living quarters smelled like bleach and metal. 19 rooms occupied. One used for spare parts. She paused outside room 3B. The door hung slightly ajar, no name on the plaque. Inside, a neatly made bunk, a damp towel hanging, a toothbrush with fresh droplets on the sink. She jotted it down. Unassigned room shows signs of use. By midnight, she'd confirmed 20 men, all accounted for. Still, the toothbrush lingered in her mind. After a cold dinner in the officer's galley, she walked back to her temporary cabin. The hallway stretched too long. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one flickering like it was stuck between thoughts. She paused. A man turned the corner at the far end. Dark jumpsuit, tall, carrying something like a coil of rope. "Excuse me," she called. Her voice sounded strange in the steel corridor. He didn't stop, didn't look up. She logged the time, 0:47, and checked the duty schedule. No one was assigned night tasks except for one engineer. She found him in the engine bay, half asleep, covered in grime. "Nobody else should be walking around," he mumbled. Rebecca nodded slowly. The next morning, 3 breakfast trays were missing. The cook shrugged. "Sometimes we mess up portions." But she'd counted, exactly 21 trays. That evening, Rebecca returned to room 3B. The door was locked. She asked the captain. "There's no key. That room shouldn't close. It's broken." Yet when she touched the knob, it swung open without resistance. The towel was gone. So was the toothbrush. In its place sat a single black boot, damp on the sole. Down in the archives, she found an old crew log tucked behind spare printer paper, faded ink. She flipped through pages until she reached a slanted entry, 2 years old. He wasn't on the manifest. He worked, slept, ate, but never signed a form. Never asked for pay, just stayed. We tried to forget. We did, but he wouldn't let us. Her breath fogged the air. She hadn't noticed it was cold. He knows we remember him. That's why we can't forget him again. The lights flickered. Somewhere above, a footstep echoed. She shut the log. Her hands were shaking. She needed fresh air. As she reached the upper deck, the sea stretched out like glass, still and too wide, and at the far edge, barely visible against the railing, was a figure, facing the water, wearing one black boot. Rebecca didn't sleep, not after what she'd seen. She ran the numbers again, just to feel grounded. But no matter how many times she added, subtracted, accounted for crew rotations, 21. At 3:14 a.m., the overhead comms crackled, static, then a voice. Not a voice, exactly. A presence in sound. Manifest must be balanced. She staggered back, the tablet clattering to the metal floor. In the galley, the crew sat stiffly, pale. No one was eating. You all knew, she whispered. No one looked at her. He's still here. Silence. Then the captain's voice, rough and low. He was never paid, never left. We moved on, but memory doesn't obey orders. Rebecca's mouth went dry. Why me? You saw him. A noise creaked through the vents, scraping, then dragging, then soft. Tap, 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 like something pacing in circles or waiting. Can't I just leave? She asked, voice breaking. You already took his place. Her ID badge was missing. Her name was gone from the records. 20 names left on the manifest, and one blank line. Up on deck, the figure stood again, looking out at the endless dark water. He turned. No face, just absence. She stepped forward, heart pounding, eyes wide, and the wind whispered, "Now you remember him." By morning, the ship's log was clean. Rebecca Yao didn't board the Meridian, according to port records. Her name had vanished from the company roster. But room 3B was locked again, and inside sat a new toothbrush, still wet. The crew resumed their routines, careful not to speak of blank spaces. Careful never to eat alone. Careful not to leave a tray unclaimed. And some nights, when the sea is still and the vents creak, a soft tapping returns. Because memory, once awakened, never fully sleeps. And the manifest is always watching. The end. He sat down again, right next to Jordan, without a word. The man's coat was too thin for the rain, shoulders damp, hands bone white and still. Jordan turned slightly toward the window, tracking droplets as they slid along the glass, pretending not to hear the whisper. But it came anyway. "I'll see you better next time." The voice was the same, gentle, soft, like someone reading your name off a list they knew too well. Jordan wasn't superstitious. The night bus was just cheap, empty, safe. At first it had been a joke. The same pale man always sitting beside him, same spot, same whisper, a tired quirk of routine. Then one morning, Jordan stepped into his apartment and tripped on a coffee table he didn't own. At the art co-op, they greeted him like a stranger. "Are you new?" the receptionist asked, blinking. "Wait, you're not Jordan, right?" He laughed. She didn't. His name was still on the door, but the key stuck. Inside, his latest painting, the one with the wolf-headed figure framed by hands, was different. Now it was a bird, and the bird was crying. He hadn't painted that. He checked his sketchbook. His name was in the corner, but not in his handwriting. The next night, he stayed home. No bus, no pale man. But the man showed up anyway, in a reflection, riding shotgun beside his mirror image. The radio crackled. Jordan leaned closer, and the man whispered from the speaker. "I'll see you better next time." He told Sam about it. She was his ex, sort of. The only one left who didn't treat him like a glitch. "You're sleep deprived," she said, holding her coffee like a shield. All-nighters, isolation, hallucinations aren't rare, Jay. But she watched him too long, then said, "You ever think someone's watching you?" By the fourth ride, the man waited before Jordan even boarded. Seat 6B, aisle side, no eye contact. Jordan hesitated. The driver, a woman with rain-cracked knuckles, didn't look up. "You boarding or not?" He sat down. The man smiled. He began waking up with scars, small ones, inside his wrists, on the back of his neck, like punctures. His emails were in a different font. His photos were missing timestamps. He visited his mother. She blinked, confused. "You look thinner," she said. He hadn't. He found a thread online, buried deep in a subforum about unlisted experiments, a program called Mirrorline, designed to test identity elasticity under environmental distortion. Volunteers were paired with trained observers meant to catalyze personality drift via proximity. Jordan read faster. The program was halted after suicides. Final reports redacted. Surviving observers went silent or missing. He stopped taking the bus, walked everywhere, slept with music on, blocked all reflections. It didn't matter. The man now sat in the park, feeding birds that stared without blinking. He was behind him in line at the store. He waved from windows on higher floors, places Jordan hadn't been. One night, Jordan didn't even remember boarding. He blinked, and the bus was moving. The man beside him, grinning. This time, Jordan looked. His face was pale, yes, but unfinished, like someone had stopped halfway. Eyes too dark, mouth too straight, familiar. The man tilted his head. Closer now. Jordan leapt off at the next stop. The streets had changed. Street names flipped. Graffiti spelled backwards words. He walked 2 hours before he found a street he recognized, and it wasn't the same color it used to be. His apartment was colder. He checked the mirror. His eyes weren't brown anymore. They were gray. He smeared paint across the canvas, anything to feel real. The images came from someone else's mind. Birds, clocks, open mouths, always bleeding. He threw the canvas out, but it came back the next day, leaning against the wall like a returned pet. Sam called. "I think I saw you downtown," she said, "but you looked wrong. Your face, static." Jordan, he was standing behind you. Click. He took a cab to the edge of the city, slept in an old hostel with no windows, burned his old IDs. Still, in the corner of the breakfast room, the man stirred his tea. Whispered, "You're almost perfect." Jordan finally begged a psychologist for help. They gave him words: derealization, dissociative episodes, time distortions. He brought them drawings. The doctor locked the file away and never called back. Jordan stopped eating, talking. He watched people like a man watching ghosts, and they watched him back like they knew, because now the man was in their eyes. He made one last decision. He wouldn't ride again, ever. He left town, bought a bike, slept on rooftops, no schedules, no transit. But eventually, he got tired, cold, it rained. He saw the warm bus lights, a mechanical sigh. He stepped aboard, soaked. The man was already there. He was smiling wider now. And Jordan realized the man was wearing his face. Final stop. The bus hissed, braked. But Jordan didn't move. He reached out slowly, touched the man's hand. It was the only thing still cold. And in his voice, not the man's, he whispered, "I'll see you better next time." The end. Marcy leaned over the edge of the tub, hand hovering above the water. Steam coiled around her wrist, thicker than it should be. She hadn't turned on the hot tap. Behind her, the fishbowl gurgled a strange goodbye. She turned in time to see the last guppy float belly up. 5 of them. Dead. She had filled the bowl using the same water minutes earlier. From the hallway came her daughter's voice. "It's loud again." Marcy stepped into the hall. "What do you mean, babe?" Sasha stood at the sink, toothbrush frozen midair. "The water, it's louder than yesterday, and it says mean things when I close my eyes." Marcy swallowed the knot forming in her throat. "Mean how?" Her daughter stared at the drain. "It says I don't need you." The neighborhood was supposed to be safe. That's what everyone said. Gentrified, secure, good schools, clean water, but none of the neighbors used it. When Marcy asked, they all laughed nervously. Some drank bottled, others had entire filtration rigs under their sinks. "Old pipes," said Miss Krell from across the street. "You get used to it." But they didn't report it. No one ever called the city. No plumber vans came. When Marcy brought it up in the online community forum, her post vanished within minutes. A moderator messaged her, "Some things are better ignored." Sasha stopped eating cereal with milk, said it tasted like dirt, like old thoughts. She started drawing. First simple faces in her sketch pad, then long, narrow tanks, then people inside them, then dozens, then hundreds, floating with mouths wide open. "They live in the pipes," she said. "They're not bad, just lonely." Marcy stopped trusting the taps and started researching. City records were no help, too sanitized, so she found the utility archives, paper files no one had digitized. There, in a 1972 blueprint labeled Aquaterra, was the secret, a facility buried beneath what would become their neighborhood. Cognitive thermal resonance trials, a biotech experiment, psychic emission via water networks, designed to amplify thought, mood, and memory through controlled temperature shifts. It failed. The memo was clear. Subjects exhibited violent hallucinations, personality inversions, shared dreams, then silence. The final file didn't mention dismantling. Just one line: "Facility has been flooded to contain bleed." The water grew warmer every day. Not hot enough to burn. Just intimate, clingy. It smelled like lilacs and salt and something like breath. And Sasha changed. She smiled when no one spoke. She began humming unfamiliar lullabies. Once, Marcy caught her whispering into the sink, "I promise, I'll tell her you want to help." In the middle of the night, the bathroom light flicked on. Marcy crept from her bed. Sasha stood in the doorway, wet footprints around her. "I wasn't asleep," she said, voice dreamy. "They don't like when I sleep. They get lonely." Marcy dropped to her knees. "Sweetie, listen to me." But her daughter tilted her head. "You never listened. You watched. That's not the same." The access tunnel behind the new construction site was unlit and damp, but the blueprint had been clear. 4 levels down, through the rusted hatch, into a control room forgotten by the world. She found the tanks by sound first, a low, moaning pulse behind the walls. Then by temperature, the air turned muggy, then sauna hot. Her skin pricked with sweat. In the main chamber, pipes arced like ribs over a central drain. The control console was intact. Levers labeled Drain Isolation Units AG. The walls pulsed. Voices rose, not as language, but longing, regret, apology. 1,000 dead minds reaching through steel and steam. They didn't want to hurt anyone. They just wanted to be heard. "I can fix this," she said aloud. "You're not supposed to be here." She reached for the lever and froze, because Sasha was standing at the edge of the room, soaking wet and smiling. "They said you'd come," she said. "They said you were brave, but sad, like them. Sasha, you shouldn't be here. This isn't... They said I could be theirs. They told me what you wouldn't, that I'm not broken." "They lied," Marcy whispered. Sasha's face twisted, almost into grief. "They listened," she said, then turned away. Marcy pulled the lever, hard. The tank screamed. Water surged through old drains. Steam burst from every pipe in the neighborhood. Faucets howled. Showers exploded into geysers of memory. And then, silence. The water ran cold after that, cold and still and tasteless, the way water should be. Neighbors started drinking from the taps again, quietly. Some looked healthier, others didn't. Marcy watched Sasha closely. The drawing stopped, the humming ended, but so did the smiles. She didn't speak, she didn't play, she just sat, eyes blank. Until one night, weeks later, when Marcy stepped into the bathroom. Steam filled the air, and from the fogged mirror, behind the hiss of a running shower, she heard her daughter's voice. Soft, distant, not alone. "Mommy, the water misses you." The end. The compound smelled like bleach and pine. Omar noticed it the moment the transport doors hissed shut behind him. Not offensive, but clean, too clean, like a place that wanted to convince him it wasn't hiding anything. His room was spacious and sterile, the bed freshly made, the corners too sharp, the angles too perfect. A slate gray terminal glowed on the wall beside the mirror. His name blinked softly. Omar Ghanem, pending assignment. The message had arrived 3 weeks after his layoff. He hadn't applied, not directly. An old recruiter had forwarded it. Confidential role, high compensation, relocation provided. He'd clicked before finishing the message. The welcome tour was oddly brief. No mention of a team, no specific responsibilities. Just a brisk, friendly orientation guide named Margot who said things like, "Your behavioral feedback loop will help determine your placement. And integration isn't a moment, it's a process." At first, he assumed it was a government contractor. Black Ops Tech or Skunkworks Behavioral Science. His days filled with nothing. Scheduled walks, meals delivered via vacuum-sealed hatch, 30-minute reflection sessions prompted by the terminal. Then came the scenarios. One morning, a man he hadn't met asked him to hold open a door that was clearly marked secure, "Do not enter." Another time, Margot invited him into her quarters, voice low, eyes uncertain, saying, "I'm not sure any of this is real." Each time, Omar hesitated, gauged, responded with calm. He thought he passed. But nothing changed. Weeks passed. The system, whatever it was, never called it a job. There were no deadlines, just observations. He tried asking direct questions. The responses were maddeningly vague. "You're doing well. Your compliance rate is strong. Most don't make it this far." One night, returning from the exercise track, his badge didn't beep. The door opened anyway. Inside, a softly lit room. Shelves lined with thin black folders, identical names, identical tabs. Ghanem, Omar, dozens of them. He opened the first, a psychological profile, intimate, dissecting his micro-reactions, cataloging responses he hadn't realized were monitored. One file included a transcript from what he thought had been a casual coffee with Margot. Exit assessment. Candidate failed to achieve identity convergence. Observed traits suggest critical variance. Denied. His stomach dropped. He flipped through another. Same name, same life, different reactions. One Omar punched the evaluator. Another attempted escape. One file had the word loop reset stamped in red ink. They weren't profiles, they were iterations. The moment he stepped out, two men in plain suits were waiting. No questions, no raised voices, just a single sentence. You weren't meant to see that yet. That night, the mirror in his room showed a delay. He moved. His reflection caught up a second later. He stopped shaving. He stopped asking questions. Weeks passed. Then the envelope came. No sender. Just his name and the emblem he now associated with silence. Inside, a manila folder labeled Room 7, Behavioral Candidate. His hands trembled as he opened it. His own face stared back. A candid photo, taken yesterday, maybe today. Data logs. Observation codes. Psych ratings. At the bottom, evaluator Ghanem Omar, cohesion status achieved. His terminal pinged. Welcome, Omar. Your integration has been approved. Please proceed to Room 7. The interview continues. He walked the halls like a sleepwalker. The compound was different now. Subtly, the walls seemed closer, the lights too white. Room 7 was open. Inside was a mirror and a chair and a folder identical to the one he'd held with his name on it. He stepped in. The door whispered shut. There was no intercom, no voice, just him, the mirror, and the file. His reflection blinked. He did not. It was out of sync again. Omar opened the folder. Inside, new instructions. Prompt, assess subject's predictive autonomy. Note all deviations. Subject name, Ghanem Omar. Omar. Status, integration phase loop off 7. The reflection raised a hand, slowly, as if following him. But he hadn't moved. He whispered, "This isn't a test." The reflection smiled and tilted its head. Later, he couldn't say how much later, Margot returned. "You did well," she said softly, voice full of manufactured warmth. "We're pleased with your convergence. You're ready to help assess new candidates now." Omar, this version of him, nodded. He turned to the wall terminal. A new file had arrived. Candidate number 8, image loading. It was a woman, nervous smile, holding a suitcase. He recognized the look in her eyes. Hope. The room dimmed slightly as the system calibrated for the next scenario. Omar adjusted the chair, smoothed the folder on the desk. He leaned forward, gently tapped the interface. "Let's begin the interview." The end. Vanessa had been at the Oracle Institute for Creative Wellness for 3 days when she noticed it. The laughter. Not that people laughed, that was expected. It was how they laughed. Perfectly synchronized. Delicate, subdued. Like a canned track playing through invisible speakers. It wasn't even always clear what they were laughing at. Sometimes someone said something mildly amusing during a forest meditation or during the mindful brunch on the veranda, and suddenly 20 people chuckled in eerie harmony. Always the same rhythm, same breath, same decibel. It was off, but Vanessa had been off too. Her manager said this place would help. No hecklers, no internet, just good vibes and trees. A break after her public meltdown on stage. She had broken into tears mid-set and blurted, "I'm just trying to be funny before the world ends." The audience hadn't laughed, so when Oracle invited her for a creative comedy residency, she accepted. But now the audience here was too perfect, too synchronized, and one night it wasn't. She was on stage at the outdoor amphitheater, lanterns hanging from pine boughs. Vanessa had been careful, sticking to the script they gave her, The Lighter Path, it was called. Terrible material. Jokes about tofu and retreats and giggle matching with your inner child. Then she broke. Just one joke. "Isn't it weird how everyone here smiles like their face was taught to?" Silence. Except for one man, his laugh exploded, deep, full-bodied, real. He couldn't stop. He slapped his leg, he doubled over, and then the two guides, those serene ones in white linen, moved toward him. No violence. Just quiet smiles as they lifted him gently and led him away. Vanessa stopped the set. No one else moved. When she tried to ask who he was, someone in the audience spoke. There was no one laughing. She didn't sleep. The next morning, she asked the front desk about the man. "What man?" they said. Their smiles held, their eyes didn't. In her room, a note waited. "Don't laugh alone. They listen for the honest ones." The woods began to whisper at night. Not words, chuckles, giggles, sometimes deep belly laughs echoing from nowhere. She heard it under her bed once. At breakfast, one of the guests leaned close. His voice cracked like old wood. You ever wonder why they call it the Oracle Institute? The oracle's part of the heart, but also the ear. They listen. Laughter reveals. Reveals what? Who you are, what your soul's aligned with. If you laugh at the wrong moment, you're not, right? Where's the guy from last night? The guest looked confused. There was no guy. Then he blinked and blood dripped from his ear. Just one drop. The next day he was gone. Vanessa tried to leave. Her car wasn't where she left it. The road out had folded. She couldn't describe it, like it turned into more forest. As if the forest itself had laughed and closed the way. A staff member found her wandering. You've been selected, they said warmly, for the inner cadence. Your audition is tonight. I didn't volunteer. Their smile remained. That wasn't a question. The room was circular, red lights, a small stage. Masks in the shape of warped, eternal smiles sat on 12 figures in the front row. The leader, tall, blank-faced, with a voice that sounded like an echo from a joke he forgot, spoke. Laughter is resonance. Pure souls laugh at the right time. You bring noise, chaos, emotion. They played clips of her stand-up, her real stuff. Old routines, honest, raw. Jokes about fear, about love, about dying parents and growing old and hating yourself just enough to laugh about it. You caused unapproved laughter, the leader said. You are a threat to the cadence, but we believe in reform. They handed her a mic. Vanessa stood there, heart hammering. She opened her mouth, stared at the masks, the still faces, the waiting silence, and she told the story of the night her father died. No punchline, no polish, just pain and humor and love, intertwined the way real life is. At first there was silence. Then one mask cracked. A sound escaped, not laughter, a sob. Then another mask fractured, and laughter, real laughter, broke out, wild and uneven and wrong. Vanessa ran, out of the chamber, into the woods. The trees were laughing now, wind twisting through branches in cruel, knowing tones. She didn't know where she was running, only that something was laughing with her. Not at her, with her. She reached the gate. It was open, but beyond it, no road. Just more trees, the same as the retreat, identical. She was back where she began. Behind her, the leader's voice rose. You've disrupted the cadence, Vanessa. But even disruption has rhythm. She turned. The masks were gone. Everyone stood there, laughing in perfect harmony. Except their eyes. Their eyes were hollow. The end. Ben Searle was 10 years old the day the wrong family picked him up from school. He didn't know they were wrong right away. They looked right, spoke right. His mom's perfume, his dad's uneven smile. But something itched behind his eyes as they led him to the car, a low hum, like a fridge running too loud inside his brain. The ride was quiet. Trees passed the windows in jerky frames. Their house looked the same from the outside, blue shutters, weedy lawn. Inside, though, it was off. The smell wasn't right. It was faintly sweet, like rotten fruit. The framed photos on the hallway wall blurred when he looked too long, the smiles leaking off faces like ink in rain. Dinner tasted like ashes. He told them so. They laughed, like he was joking. Your imagination's still wild, the not dad said, ruffling his hair too long, like petting a dog. Ben tried the phone. The dial tone sang something, a lullaby in a language he didn't know. When he pushed numbers, the receiver pulsed against his ear like a heartbeat. He didn't try again. He opened the front door once, just to see. The street outside looked older. The mailbox was rusted, bent. The neighbor's house was gone, just grass and a collapsed swing set like bones. No one came for him. Days passed, or maybe years. The fake family read bedtime stories, pages filled with runes, sentences that curled like worms. They'd laugh when he asked what they meant. It's tradition, they'd say. He began forgetting things. His birthday, his third-grade teacher's name, the smell of his real mother's shampoo. Dreams came full of static and smoke. He'd wake with blood on his pillow and not know why. The town thinned, storefronts disappeared, people turned their faces away. The sky was always overcast. Or maybe there was no sky, just a ceiling too far away to see. He found a journal once, beneath a loose floorboard in the attic. The writing was sharp, hurried. If you're reading this, it's almost too late. They feed on remembering. Don't let them see you see. There was a doodle, a boy with black lines for eyes and a mouth sewn shut. One night, when the wind outside howled like broken flutes, Ben saw a shape stumble into the house. He was older, bloody, wild-eyed. The man looked just like him, except heavier and scared. "Shh," adult Ben whispered. "They think you're me. That's how I got out." Ben stared. "What are you talking about?" "We can't exist at the same time." Adult Ben grabbed his shoulders. "It unravels them, the loop. If they figure out we're both here." The kitchen lights flickered. The walls pulsed like breathing. From the hall, the fake family stood watching, still as mannequins, not blinking. "They don't know yet," adult Ben whispered, "but they will." The floor cracked. A sound, low and wet, filled the house like meat sliding off bone. The fake mom opened her mouth. It unhinged too far. Her voice was three voices stacked on top of each other. "You are not supposed to see." They ran. The house shifted as they moved. Rooms stretched, stairs coiled like intestines. Behind them, the fake dad's hands turned into tendrils, reaching with too many joints. They barricaded the attic door. Adult Ben was shaking. "We have to collapse the loop. That's the only way I got out. You have to forget." Or what?" Ben asked. "Or they eat us both." He didn't ask what that meant. They burned the photos. The flames hissed green. Faces screamed and warped as the glass cracked. The Not sister howled from downstairs, a sound like grinding teeth. Ben looked outside. The town was gone, just white fog and faint shapes moving inside it, too tall to be trees. In the corner of the attic, he saw a crib. His name was painted on it. Inside, a third version of himself, smaller, maybe 6, slept, curled around a stuffed rabbit. "How many are we?" Ben whispered. Adult Ben didn't answer. He lit the last match. The house screamed. When he opened his eyes, he was in bed. The room was quiet. Morning sun leaked through the curtains. Birdsong outside, normal. He blinked. His arms were unburned. No blood. "Ben, breakfast," a voice called. His mom's voice. He patted down the stairs. There she was, smiling over scrambled eggs. His dad at the table, reading the paper. Everything perfect, almost. The photos on the wall were back, but clearer now. He was in all of them, always smiling. He picked one up, looked closer. The background was smudged, and his eyes were staring just past the camera, like he'd seen something no one else could. "Don't let them see you see," the older him had whispered. He turned the photo over, written in childish scrawl. We made you forget. If you remember, we'll start again." Ben smiled back at his parents. His voice trembled. "I love you." They smiled wider, too wide. Outside, the sky began to static. The end. And that's the end. But the night is far from over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Tell me, are you still awake? Or did the whispers follow you into your dreams? If sleep won't come just yet, there are plenty more stories waiting for you. Go on, pick another. I'll be here.